This guy woke up from a coma in the hospital. In fact, he had been found 40 years in the future. In the past, Jeho was a monster. His team was losing the battle, so he went in alone. Everyone was terrified. He told them that the only thing they had to do was write a book about his story as a great hero. After that, Jeho sealed everyone together with himself and spent decades fighting countless monsters. But after 20 years, he woke up in the hospital. The world was no longer the same, but he was exactly the same. When Jeho checked his status, he was shocked. Besides his stolen abilities of appraisal and throw, he had awakened a new, insane skill, immortality. In other words, he is now immune to death in a world where only the strongest rule. Humanity, in its daily routine, knew nothing. They didn't know they weren't alone. A man on the street bumped into a hooded figure and told them to watch where they were going. There was another civilization flourishing on Earth. It revealed the existence of the Burrower civilization, humans living underground. An independent civilization, separate from those living on the surface, emerged amidst a massive explosion. Due to the sudden invasion of the Burrower civilization, chaos erupted. Humanity now faced the danger of extinction. Humans soon counterattacked, but none of their weapons could harm them. The creatures used their mysterious powers to defend themselves. They could neutralize even military-grade weapons. But soon the tide began to turn, as the Burrowers' peculiar powers started affecting humans, and some developed special powers, transforming into espers. Humans with these special powers then began to fight against the Burrowers. They defeated the dungeons of the underground civilization one by one, thus igniting the flame of humanity's hope. And eventually, the gate to the final dungeon opened. In the spring of 2005, 7 of the world's best espers gathered. They attacked the final dungeon, the Burrower's base, and brought an end to the long war. As a result of their conquest, they were hailed as the 7 heroes who saved humanity. They were rewarded with fame, stepping out of a limousine into a barrage of camera flashes. The heroes were greeted by the public and press, who bestowed immense wealth and honor upon them. But one person, Yeop, never returned. The leader of the 7 heroes couldn't enjoy the rewards. Instead, he was honored with the unveiling of a statue. The surviving heroes became celebrities, and the fallen hero became a legend, with a statue erected in his honor. Then, 17 years passed, and a narrator announced a critical moment at the International Battle Arena in Seoul. France had launched its attack against Korea, but the Korean competitors were unable to react. The narrator then announced the name of the culprit, Nathan Bernard. He was slaughtering the opposing team. The French player attacked his opponent, throwing him to the ground. Nathan had secured 6 kills single-handedly. A man watched the broadcast, wondering if a player like him had ever existed since the International League was formed. Commentators stated that he was proving to be one of this era's top 3 espers, and that the national team was on the verge of defeat. Korea's only remaining player was Baek Hayan. Even with little chance of victory, Baek Hayan charged directly at Nathan. She then used her signature whip in a frontal assault against her opponent. The audience and the coach watched the scene intently. Hayan directly attacked him with her weapon. Nathan remarked that it was what he expected from the daughter of one of the 7 heroes. He then stated that she would never be able to win with a team like that. With a counterattack, the French player defeated her. Korea lost, and the national team couldn't defeat a single player, Nathan Bernard, the match's MVP. The crowd lamented, remembering how Korean espers had dominated an entire era. The coach reflected that, despite having cleared many dungeons, they hadn't kept up with the new times. The defeat was overwhelmingly crushing for coach Baek Jeho. It was a disgrace for the country that had birthed heroes like Yeop and Baek Jeho. He gripped the railing in the face of total defeat. Commentators admitted that, despite facing a strong team, the game was pathetic, and they imagined the public's disappointment. Online messages showed the public's outrage at the match's outcome. Online criticism continued, with people questioning why the coach, one of the 7 heroes, didn't compete. The crowd booed and shouted insults, demanding a new national team, claiming Baek Hayan was their only player. A spectator yelled that he hadn't paid to watch such a match. Baek Jeho, one of the 7 heroes, observed the empty game pods and lamented the mess. His 3rd game as the national team's head coach also ended in defeat. The player disconnected from the module, ending her connection to the battlefield. She commented that it was as if the crowd was saying everyone but Hayan was replaceable. Then she questioned if the famous willpower and strength of Korean espers were now things of the past. The coach walked down the hallway, stating that their mentality and skill level were low, and that the best had long since departed. He then concluded that the best had departed because they had died. He stopped walking in the middle of the hallway. Then, he sighed and called out Yeop's name. Jeho looked up. Looking at an old photo on the wall, he said it would be good if his friend were still alive. Someone appeared at the doorway and informed him he should go for the interviews. The young man advised that everyone was waiting. The coach sighed upon hearing the warning. morning, he agreed to go and apologize to his fellow citizens. Then, he patted the young man's shoulder and said that was the only reason they made him coach. Jeho turned and stated that they couldn't win with this team. They were too weak and lacked the right mentality. His assistant argued that he hadn't even been coach for long, and this was just the beginning. But the man said he should submit his resignation during the interview. He walked towards the door, saying that unless ManhwaCapped walked through that door, it was impossible for him, and if he left, the national team would truly be hopeless. The coach affirmed to himself that he couldn't lose this chance. He then decided he really needed to resign this time. Suddenly, his phone began to ring in his jacket pocket. The call was from the association president, and he wondered if it was to lecture him. He answered the call, and the president asked if he had heard the news. Jeho replied that he had seen with his own eyes that the national team lost and disgraced the country. But the president denied it, and the coach asked what it was about. Shocked by the news, the coach asked what he had said. From the sky, a figure plummeted at high speed from a portal. The figure landed in the middle of a bustling square. The impact of the landing startled the surrounding people. In Gwanghwaman Square, people shouted that someone in armor had fallen from the sky, near the statues of Admiral Yisun Shin and King Sejong the Great. The third statue was of the one man who saved his 6 fellow heroes by sacrificing himself, and sitting at the base of the broken statue was ManhwaCapped himself, as the crowd filmed him. The surrounding people shouted his name, confirming it was indeed ManhwaCapped. The president yelled over the phone, asking if he was deaf and why he didn't understand what he was saying. In front of the statue honoring him, the hero began to lift his head. The president then announced the big news. ManhwaCapped had returned alive. In a flashback, ManhwaCapped faces a horde of shadow creatures alone. He parries a powerful blow from one of the monsters with his shield. Countless enemies rush towards him, ready to attack. He then braces himself for the imminent combat. The shadowy creatures stare at him before surging forward. The dungeon doors finally close behind him. He confirms that the dungeon doors have sealed shut. Alone, he confronts the army of monsters and their master. He then prepares for the upcoming battle. The dungeon master observes him from above. He then shouts for them to fight to the death. Suddenly, a man sits up in a hospital bed. He gasps for air, sitting on the edge of the bed. A woman enters the room and says he's finally awake. He brings a hand to his head, asking where he is. The nurse informs him he's in a hospital and asks how he feels. He reacts with confusion to the information he just received. Then, he's shocked to learn the year is 2021. Not 2005. Agitated, he questions her, stating he entered the final dungeon in 2005. The woman says he'll need an explanation about the current situation. She then turns on the television and asks him to watch. A news anchor begins presenting the day's news, featuring a report on ManhwaCapped. The report announces that the leader of the 7 heroes has returned alive after 17 years. The journalist reports that he fell from the sky and was found unconscious, but with minor injuries. The news also mentions he hasn't aged in the 17 years that have passed. Experts suspect the incident was caused by a space-time distortion. After the report ends, he questions if 17 years truly passed. As to him, it was 2005, just days ago. The nurse confirms and points out that's why there's a huge commotion outside. She then turns to the window and warns that reporters have been camped outside since he arrived. He looks at the crowd of journalists and laments that even after 17 years, some things haven't changed. He then asks for a mirror, and the nurse says she'll fetch one. She hands him the mirror and asks if it's suitable. He looks in the mirror and realizes he hasn't aged at all. He reflects that he couldn't possibly look like this at 47 and questions if this is truly his world after 17 years. Then, a sudden realization hits him. He desperately asks about all his money. The nurse explains that, according to his will, everything was donated to a children's fund, much to his despair. Then he asks about his house, and she informs him it became a museum called ManhwaCapped's house. Next, he asks about his car, which was sold at a charity auction. He is utterly desolate at the news. He then concludes that he can't live in a museum, and that he is now homeless and penniless. ManhwaCapped laments that if he had known, he would have kept some for himself. The nurse reassures him, saying no one would abandon him, and that Mr. Baek Jeho had already contacted them. She warns that he said he'll arrive at the hospital soon. He agrees, and the nurse says she'll leave him alone, asking him to ring the bell if he needs anything. Even seeing it with his own eyes, he can't believe it. He decides he'll ask Jeho for details later, and for now, he'll check his physical health. Then, he activates his Scanner Eyes ability. This ability, which made him the strongest in the world, allows him to analyze and visualize a target's information. He can see not only current abilities, but also detect any dormant powers that will awaken in the future. Thanks to this, he was able to develop faster than anyone else. Thus, he was able to lead dungeon raids early in his career. He remembers when a young man begged him to accept him as his pupil. That young man was Jeho, who would become one of the 7 heroes. ManhwaCapped analyzed him and thought he was a failure, but he discovered his pupil had super high high development potential. He then accepts him, but warns he can't promise survival, and the young man promises to do his best. Back in the present, he analyzes his own attributes and sees that his strength, agility, and speed remain the same. He then notices his mentality is at 110. He wonders how this is possible, as the limit for a human's skill level is 100. Furthermore, he notices something else in his status. He realizes he has a new ability he didn't possess before, Immortality. He wonders how such a powerful ability can exist, considering new abilities develop under special circumstances. He then speculates that perhaps he acquired it in his last dungeon fight. A loud noise interrupts him as he ponders its meaning. He turns towards the sound upon hearing someone call him Yop. At the door, Big Jeho suddenly appears. Seomun Yeop looks at the man in front of him. He then asks if he is Jeho. With tears in his eyes, Jeho says he's truly back. Yop comments that he's become much weaker. Jeho wipes his tears and replies, it's because everything has been peaceful. Later, on the rooftop, Yop asks if he's stopped crying yet. Jeho tells him to wait until he's old, as tears just come out, but Yop replies he's still young and knows nothing about that. Yop then changes the subject and asks if he kept his promise. Jeho asks what promise that was. Yop reminds him about his biography, and his friend finally remembers. He then explains he hired a ghostwriter famous for fantasy novels, and Yeop asks if the story starts with him hatching from an egg. Besides the book, a documentary and a film turned him into a sort of mythical god, and even with bad plots, everything went viral, and the movie was a worldwide box office hit. Seomun Yeop simply asks what that matters. He vents that he thought he died in the dungeon, but woke up 17 years later in a hospital, and though he knows he's not delirious, it's hard to accept. And to make matters worse, he saved the world, but is now poor and homeless. Jeho reassures him, saying that's what friends are for, and he's there to help him with money. Yop comments that he's really grown up, and asks if he made money and started a business in the last 17 years. His friend explains he earned reward money from dungeons, and that there's a limit to how much a person can eat and relax. He questions how a clueless guy like him didn't go bankrupt running a business. Jeho admits he thought the same thing, so he hired a professional to handle everything. Yop then asks if he's unemployed now, but he denies it, stating he has a job. Curious, he asks what his friend does. Jeho reveals he's a coach, the head coach of the national team. Yop asks why he said that so quietly and questions what kind of coach he is, but Jeho asks him to wait a moment. He then shows his phone with a match on it and asks his friend to look. Yop looks at the images on the phone. He questions if those aren't the dungeons they raided, and if they hadn't disappeared, but his friend explains it's a virtual reality sport called Battleground. Jeho explains that virtual reality dungeons are created, and two teams fight on that field for sport. After the war, they used espers for this new business, which became the most popular sport. He comments that it looks almost like child's play, but his friend says it's not quite like that because, among the best players, there are some who would be a match for the 7 heroes, and the Battleground World Cup ranking is a nation's pride. Yop then asks what Korea's ranking is. Jeho is surprised by the question. He asks if his friend is getting deaf in his old age and repeats the question about Korea's ranking. Yeop argues that since Korea had many strong espers, they should be highly ranked. To be honest, he starts to say that Korea is in last place, and Yeop's cup falls from the ledge. The two fall silent for a moment. Yeop turns and simply asks, what? When a great evil disappears, the one who defeated it becomes the next evil. Inside the car, Seomun Yeop turns to Baek Jeho and asks what he means. Baek Jeho states that's why their country became a weak nation in Battleground, making Yeop question how that makes sense. Seomun Yeop then deduces that the higher-ups became afraid of espers after the war, thinking they'd be challenged, and concludes they never change. Jeho continues, saying that's why Battleground was restricted, and the country wanted to control all strong espers, including himself, and Yup says he can imagine what happened, so he assumes all strong Korean espers went abroad to become athletes or coaches. Baek Jeho confirms with a laugh, saying he should have broken the legs of the scoundrels who tried to use them in the past. Yop reminds him that instead, he used his words to confront ministers and presidents because he didn't like how they took advantage of everyone. Looking in the rearview mirror, Baek Jeho mentions they had to start from scratch and that the average for athletes is low. He turns to Seomun Yeop to continue the topic but is immediately cut off with a no. Jeho complains that he didn't even let him speak, but Yeop already knows he wants him to participate in Battleground, with the older man insisting it's a waste for someone in their prime. Seomun Yeop replies it's not a waste and he no longer wants to live as an esper, having ended that life in the last dungeon, but but Jeho insists it's just a sport now. He retorts that he never felt responsible and asks if he looks like the type of person who would fight for others. Yup explains that as a young man he fought to survive, and after becoming an esper he lived to be recognized. And finally, he asks if he can't just live for himself now. He continues saying the media would go crazy with headlines about the world's savior returning to rescue Korea, and how everyone would build expectations around him. Jeho then asks if he's honestly not interested in Battleground, and Yeop replies no, because he hates it for being like a circus. With a sigh, Jeho says he understands, and there's nothing to be done. Yop just watches him silently, but Jeho states that the nation's espers are not a lost cause, making Yop question what he means, and he replies they still have espers like her. A billboard on the road displays Hayan's image, and Yop comments that she's very beautiful. Then, Jeho reveals she is his daughter. Yop is surprised, remembering Hayan as a 6-year-old, but Jeho corrects him, saying 17 years have passed and she's now 23. He tries to play it off, commenting that she's beautiful and 17 years flew by, still seeing traces of her childhood face. Jeho just tells Yop to stop and he apologizes. The car drives along the road under the night sky. They finally reach their destination, a large modern house. Jeho's wife, Han Sunshi, appears and calls out Yeop's name. She greets him, saying he's finally back after so long, and he replies that to him it's only been a week. Yeop jokes that he's aged a lot in a week, and Sunshi laughs, calling him silly. She tells her husband he must be tired from driving, but he states it was the least he could do for a friend he thought was dead for 17 years. Watching the couple, Yeop reflects that it's starting to sink in, and that he really did survive and return. He realizes he's in a peaceful world, without wars or dungeons, and now, standing before that house, he wonders what he'll do with his life. For now, he decides to just relax a bit and grabs the remote control. Lying on the sofa, Yop wonders if anything good is on, but suddenly something on the screen surprises him. He sits up, seeing they're replaying Stairs to Hell, and celebrates, curious about the ending. With clenched fists, he declares, "This is it!" Then Yeop declares that this is the reason he survived. Jeho enters the room and hears him announce he's going to binge-watch the series to the end with lots of snacks. He further adds that he'll watch all the shows he missed since 2005, leaving Jeho shocked by the idea. Jeho rushes to him and asks if he's really going to stay home watching all the shows he missed. Yeop reminds him that he said to do whatever he wanted, and the other reluctantly agrees. But Jeho opens the curtain, saying the reporters have been outside for days and won't leave until they see him. Yeop then gets up from the sofa to take a look. On the other side of the window, there's a massive crowd of reporters. He turns, calling them annoying leeches. Realizing he has no choice, he gets up from the sofa. And finally, Yeop orders Jeho to gather the reporters for the next day. He adds that he'll gather them to tell them to get out of his life. The next day, in a large building, cameras flash for the start of the press conference. Yeop and Jeho walk onto the stage, while reporters comment that he seems calm and the event was quicker than expected. An announcer declares the start of the press conference as Yeop faces the flashes. Holding the microphone, he introduces himself, saying that as everyone can see, he has returned, and the situation is as curious to him as it is to them. Beside him, Jeho watches, relieved, believing that this time he's handling the situation properly. But Yop continues, stating he's not grateful at all, and that everyone can ask their questions, and then get out of his life. Jeho realizes he hasn't changed at all, and announces they'll answer questions one by one. Asked how he returned from the final dungeon, Yeop replies he has no idea and simply woke up in the hospital. Next, he denies having memories of the last 17 years, says he had no contact with the other heroes, and doesn't intend to reclaim his assets. He asks for the next question and points to a reporter raising his hand. The man asks if he's heard about Battleground with Coach Jeho, and Yeop confirms he has. Then the reporter questions him if he has plans to become a Battleground player. The crowd of reporters begins to whisper about the question. Jeho merely observes as the question he'd been expecting was finally asked. Yeop replies he has no interest whatsoever. The reporter then questions him about the reason. He simply states he's not interested, but the man provokes him, asking if he's lacking confidence. On the screen, Yeop points and replies that the only thing lacking there is the hair on his head. He states that Battleground doesn't look fun, and he won't act like a clown for their entertainment. Yeop hopes everyone's curiosity has been satisfied, as he no longer wants any harassment. He then bids them farewell. As he turns to leave, Baek Jeho thanks everyone for their presence, but someone asks them to wait. A reporter asks to ask one more question before he leaves. He mentions that a player named Gerald Walker accused him of not being on his level and asks what he thinks of that. Seomin Yeop is silent for a moment and just repeats the name Gerald Walker. The reporter explains he's a famous player in the United States, known as the pride of the tanker position. Yeop then asks if he is the strongest player, but the man replies there are 3 great players at the top: Nathan Bernard from France, Roy Meyer from Ireland, and Daniel Mance from Germany. The reporter clarifies that Walker is a very skilled player, but not ranked among the top 3. Seomin Yeop sighs, saying he understands that 17 years have passed. He then turns and sends a message to Walker not to be so cocky if he's not even among the top 3. And he further says that if he wants to fight instead of using Battleground, he should come meet him in person. Then Yeop raises his finger and declares he'll personally bury him in the backyard. Elsewhere, the broadcast is watched on a large television screen. The CEO of the player agency, Zachary Wood, asks Walker if he heard that. A hand crushes the remote control. The man, Walker, calls out Wood's name. And finally, he orders them to prepare the jet for Korea immediately. An official match against the United States is announced. Baek Jeho questions on the phone how they could do this so suddenly. Seomin Yeop complains about the noise and asks Baek Jeho to go outside, who in turn agrees. Yeop complains he couldn't hear the TV and asks what's happening. Baek Jeho then informs him about the match in 2 weeks. He simply replies that he doesn't care. Baek Jeho blames him, mentioning Gerald Walker's name. Seomin Yeop asks who that person is. Baek Jeho reminds him that it's the one he promised to bury in the backyard. Seomin Yeop finally recalls. He continues, saying the man has been furious since his public humiliation, but Seomin Yeop thinks the guy is petty. Baek Jeho explains that since he can't fight Yeop, he'll seek revenge against the Korean team. Seomin Yeop questions what the team has to do with him and calls the other man weird. Baek Jeho merely puts a hand to his head. He then tells his companion to cheer up, saying he'll have fun in his stead. Seomin Yeop suddenly sits up and asks about the national team's match. Then he questions if Hayan will be there, since she's a national team player. Elsewhere, Baek Hayan arrives home and announces her arrival to her mother. Seomin Yeop suddenly startles on the couch. Elsewhere, Hayan's mother greets her, surprised she arrived early. Hayan explains she rushed over as soon as she heard Uncle Yeop was there, wanting to see him. She then asks where her uncle is, and her mother replies he's in the living room. Seomin Yeop greets them from the couch. Hayan looks at him. Then she runs towards him and tackles him onto the couch. He complains she almost killed him, but Hayan just says how happy she is that he's back. Seomin Yeop pats her head, confessing he feared she might have forgotten him. She assures him she never could, reminding him he always brought her sweets her parents forbade. He comments she grew up so fast, and Hayan replies she's already 23. Hayan asks if he came back for the official match, but he states he came to see her, and the match is secondary. She leans closer to him on the couch to talk. Then, Hayan asks if it's true he doesn't want to play Battlefield. Seomin Yeop questions if Jeho sent her to convince him, and dismisses the topic, saying he's not interested. Hayan insists on knowing why, but Seomin Yeop replies that her uncle has many things to do. She holds his arm and asks if even a gentle plea wouldn't work, but he denies the possibility. Hayan says he's changed. Seomin Yeop retorts, claiming they're the ones who changed. She turns away, remembering he used to do everything she wanted, but he counters that back then she only asked for snacks. Hayan turns back to him. Then, she asks him to accompany her to an avatar verification at the league. Seomin Yeop questions what an avatar is. He looks at the TV and expresses his unwillingness to go. Hayan pleads, explaining her father can't go because he's busy. Seomin Yeop finally gives in and asks where they're going. With a smile, she replies he'll see. Upon arriving at the Korean Battlefield Association, they are greeted at the entrance. A staff member invites them to follow him through a technological hallway. Seomin Yeop and Baek Hayan walk behind 2 staff members. One of the men informs Hayan that they will begin with her avatar verification, and she agrees. The system then performs weapon and armor verification, synchronizing the avatar. Hayan puts on the helmet and initiates the connection. Then, her avatar materializes in the virtual space. From the control room, Seomin Yeop watches intently at Hayan's request. In the virtual environment, she asks for a monster to test her movements, and a large wolf-like creature appears before her. Yeop observes the confrontation on the screen and questions if that's even possible. The staff member explains that Battlefield is a virtual reality sport that recreates everything. Seomin Yeop comments that the simulation is almost almost like reality. Then he decides to watch to see how good Hayan really is. The creature advances at high speed. The monster then leaps towards her, but Hayan prepares her whip for a counterattack. She leaps into the air to dodge. Her whip wraps around the creature's neck. With a pull, she throws it far away. Hayan advances on the creature with her sword and dagger in hand. Then she delivers a blow that cuts the monster in half. She observes the result of her attack. The system announces that the avatar sync verification is complete and the connection can be terminated. Hayan breaks into a smile. Outside the simulation, she runs to ManhwaCapped and asks how her performance was. He says she still has a long way to go, and Hayan challenges him to try. ManhwaCapped begins to refuse, but she interrupts him, saying it's just for him to create an avatar. She explains she heard about his strength, but wants to see it with her own eyes. Hayan continues, saying that when she was finally old enough to see him fight, he had already left. She then stares at him. After a moment of silence, ManhwaCapped sighs and agrees. He agrees to do the test just once at her request, making Hayan very happy. The staff member then approaches and asks if ManhwaCapped will also do the test. The man explains that under normal circumstances, they would need to measure all his attributes before the avatar test. But the staff member states that since it's not an official match, they can go straight to the test. ManhwaCapped asks if he can enter as he is. The man explains he'd be empty-handed and in his tracksuit. Then, he suggests ManhwaCapped take a weapon, while two men bring a spear and a shield with difficulty. ManhwaCapped holds the equipment, finding it different and very light. The staff member explains it's the standard for battlefield. He says it's fine and enters the test chamber. ManhwaCapped states that only the spear will be enough and asks them to begin. Inside the simulation, he prepares to enter the virtual dungeon and decides to try it out. The system scans ManhwaCapped's data and begins to create his avatar. The staff member asks if he can hear him. ManhwaCapped then materializes in a virtual replica of the test room. He comments that the feeling is similar to passing through dungeon portals. The staff member confirms there will be no synchronization issues, and Hayan wishes him good luck. While stretching, he asks for a monster similar to the one Hayan faced, and the staff member agrees. Then a button is pressed, and a creature begins to materialize in the arena. The giant creature appears before him, and ManhwaCapped recognizes it as a Salaboon. He notes it's a bit different, and the staff member explains it's a special monster that can only be defeated with aura. The man adds that they used all available data to create the strongest possible version of the creature. The Salaboon advances against him, but ManhwaCapped dodges the attack. He then stares at the creature. ManhwaCapped considers the spear useless and throws it aside. Then he positions himself and launches a single blow towards the monster. In the control room, Hayan and the staff member watch the scene in disbelief. The staff member questions if he defeated the monster with a flick to the forehead, but ManhwaCapped downplays the feat. The man in the control room comments that Salaboons aren't that easy to defeat. ManhwaCapped asks them to send another opponent so he can test something. A new creature materializes, and he finds the environment perfect for his test. He complains that the monster wasn't strong enough to warm him up and asks if there's nothing else he can do. A voice calls him the world's best Esper, and ManhwaCapped turns around upon hearing the foreign language. In the control room, the system goes on alert, and everyone wonders what's happening. The staff member desperately tries to control the situation via the panel. A warning on the screen reports an unauthorized external connection attempt. The man is then thrown backward by the panel. In the arena, a new warrior with an axe and shield emerges amidst flames. The newcomer lands and asks ManhwaCapped if the offer to fight is still on the table. ManhwaCapped stares at him in silence. The warrior provokes him, saying he remained quiet because he didn't expect him to actually show up. Then, he declares he'll prove right there that the title of 7 heroes is just a label. The warrior advances at high speed towards ManhwaCapped. He merely watches the approaching attack. The blow hits the ground, causing a strong impact. With his shield broken, the warrior asks where his opponent went. A voice behind him questions, asking if he's scared. ManhwaCapped suddenly appears and replies no. He then states that this will finally be a decent test. After picking up his spear, he positions himself for the fight. The two opponents stare at each other from a distance in the arena. In the control room, Hayan asks what's happening. Someone tells her not to worry. The control room door then opens. Hayan and the staff member turn to the entrance. Jeho enters and informs them he authorized everything, so there's no reason to worry. Hayan recognizes him as the association president and questions him, as he had said he would be busy. Jeho explains that they had already talked, but the news didn't reach the local team. Park Jin-tae, the association's vice president, asks Ms. Moss if that's enough. Emma Moss, Gerald Walker's manager, thanks them for their cooperation with the unusual request. In a past scene, Baek Jeho stands before Seomun Yeop with a table full of food. Park Jin-tae observes the confrontation. This opportunity might spark Seomun Yeop's interest in battlefield. In the arena, the two combatants' weapons move rapidly. Then, Seomun Yeop's spear and Gerald Walker's axe clash. The impact of the collision generates strong pressure in the area. Seomun Yeop slides backward, breaking his movement with a hand on the ground. Gerald Walker prepares another attack with his axe. Seomun Yeop observes his opponent after the attack. Then he activates the Scanner Eyes ability. An information screen appears displaying Gerald Walker's data. The analysis reveals that his strength and endurance are at maximum, making him perfect for a tank role. Seomun Yeop concludes that his opponent is more than he appears. Gerald Walker questions why he's just staring at him instead of fighting. With a smile, Seomun Yeop acknowledges his strength. He then remembers something while thinking about his opponent's ability. It's the ability he acquired. So he decides he will test the power he gained in the hospital with this new adversary. Seomun Yeop advances at high speed with his spear. Gerald Walker prepares for the attack, anticipating the movement, but he stops his advance mere inches from his opponent's face. The warrior wonders why he stopped right before reaching him. Seomun Yeop merely stares at him up close. He then says he'll show him something fun. With a hand on the ground, he delivers a blow that shatters the surrounding ground. In the control room, Hayan calls her uncle's name. Gerald Walker questions why he stood still and didn't dodge the attack. Gerald Walker observes that Seomun Yeop stopped before the attack, as if wanting to die. Seomun Yeop feels the impact of the blow. Then, a massive attack hits Gerald Walker head-on. He is thrown backward by the force of the impact. The arena floor shatters with an object embedded in it. Gerald Walker wonders what happened, as his opponent should have died. Someone coughs amidst the dust. A voice complains about the useless smoke covering the area. In the control room, everyone watches the scene without understanding. Gerald Walker looks back, finding the situation impossible. Seomun Yeop rises from the debris unharmed and asks what he thought. He then remembers he promised to show something fun and reveals his immortality ability. Seomun Yeop asks what he thought and if it wasn't cool, while the screen displays his immortality ability. Gerald Walker questions incredulously how he managed to survive that attack. He explains that he acquired a new special ability upon returning to life, becoming immortal, and that the test was a success. Seomun Yeop realizes his injuries also heal on their own and concludes they can't fight that way. Then he calls the staff member in the control room, who is startled by the call. He explains that he cannot die due to an ability he gained by surviving the final dungeon, leaving the staff member perplexed. Seomun Yeop considers the use of the ability unfair and asks if there's a way to block it. The man confirms it's not difficult. He then asks for his immortality to be blocked, and the staff member deactivates the special ability via the panel. Gerald Walker overhears the conversation. Seomun Yeop says he just wanted to test the ability since it was his first time. He provokes him, saying he did it so his opponent wouldn't use immortality as an excuse for defeat. Gerald Walker tightens his grip on his weapon and advances across the cracked floor. He throws his spear and shield to the ground, commenting that the rumors about his opponent's arrogance are true. But Seomun Yeop catches the spear in midair and claims to be much stronger than the rumors say. Gerald Walker says he'll judge that for himself and tells him to stand up so they can fight without more excuses. Crouching, Seomun Yeop questions him, saying he should first defeat the top 3 before coming to him. Seomun Yeop continues, stating he heard he's not even among the top 3. Gerald Walker advances with a blow, and Seomun Yeop asks if he hit a sensitive spot. The warrior then launches himself into the air. They exchange a rapid sequence of blows with their weapons. The clash between the spear and the axe continues. After a blow, he lands on the ground and realizes his opponent has disappeared. Then Seomun Yeop appears behind him, saying he's there. Gerald Walker turns quickly. Seomun Yeop attacks over his shoulder with the tip of his spear. The blow hits his opponent directly in the face. As Gerald Walker recoils through the air, Seomun Yeop prepares his spear. He recognizes that his opponent reacted quickly, even with limited vision. But then he decides it's time to finish the fight. He focuses for the next move, and with a single movement, he throws the spear with great speed. The thrown spear hits Gerald Walker's shield forcefully. Then, the weapon explodes against the wall on the other side of the arena. Seomun Yeop turns with a smile. Gerald Walker lands on the ground, leaning on his shield. He notices the spear changed course at the last second, recognizing his opponent's level of control. Seomun Yeop then simply spreads his arms and declares his victory. But Gerald Walker kneels and claims the fight isn't over. He says he missed on purpose. His opponent merely stares at him, not understanding. Yeop advises him to switch to a smaller shield and stop acting like a typical tank. He continues, explaining that he's giving tips because his field of vision is obstructed by the shield. Gerald Walker reacts to the mention of his field of vision. Yeop deduces that he chose that shield to have more time to look around during the fight, but he explains that this tactic is a disadvantage against skilled opponents who know how to exploit it. So he suggests that switching to a smaller shield would be better for him in the long run. Gerald Walker asks if he's not just mocking him, but Yeop replies that even with the tips, he still wouldn't win. Gerald Walker decides it doesn't hurt to try. In the control room, everyone watches his decision on the monitor. Jeho can't believe Yeop gave him tips, as he's already a tough opponent. Yeop turns to leave, saying he did his part and has shows to watch. He then addresses Gerald Walker, who stares at him. With a gesture, Yeop charges a consulting fee for teaching him. Gerald Walker agrees to pay, but sets a condition. Yeop questions him about what the condition would be. He then demands a new fight in the official match happening in 2 weeks. Yeop refuses the offer, stating he has no interest in battlefield or money. Gerald Walker grabs him and offers anything he wants for his participation, but he tells him to leave. The warrior approaches and assures him that next time will be different. He insists Yeop can't waste his power, but he replies that the decision is his. The two stare at each other in a standoff in the arena. The team in the control room merely observes the tense discussion. Park Jin-tae observes the scene in silence. With a smile, he decides he will use the situation to his advantage. Elsewhere, a woman intently watches a drama on television. Lying on the couch, Yeop also follows the scene, questioning the characters' fates, but the programming is interrupted by urgent news. He sits up, complaining that the interruption happened right at the best part. The anchor announces that Yeop will not participate in Battlefield, but a recent discussion with Gerald Walker might have made him change his mind. He listens confused as the reporter mentions an anonymous informant who sent a video of the confrontation. The American team's condition is revealed, demanding Yeop's participation in a friendly match if they beat Korea 11-0. The anchor then reports that Yeop has already accepted the condition. Surprised, he stands up and questions when he ever accepted such an agreement. At the Korean Battlefields Association headquarters, the president's office door abruptly burst open. A man entered, questioning what was going on. He approached the desk of Park Jin-tae, the association president, while another man tried to restrain him. The man demanded to know who was responsible for the anonymous tip, vowing to kill them with his own hands. He then showed a video on his phone, complaining they had edited out the part where he refused the proposal. As the man promised to catch whoever leaked the video, the president rose from his chair. Park Jin-tae bowed formally, apologizing to Yeop for the incident. He explained that he couldn't refuse the American Association's request, citing their good relationship with Walker and media pressure. Yeop seemed to understand the situation, but still hesitated in his response. Then, Park Jin-tae placed a hand on his shoulder and told him not to worry. He revealed he had devised a plan to avoid inconveniencing him, proposing a condition for his participation. The condition was that if the American team won without any deaths, Yeop would participate in a friendly match. He assured him there was nothing to worry about, as the Korean team wasn't the best. Yeop exploded, saying he had no interest in the battlefield, and questioned why they kept bothering him. But the president stated that the condition was essentially impossible to meet, which is why everyone had reached an agreement. Park Jin-tae grabbed Yeop's collar, appealing to their friendship and asking for a favor. He then promised all profits would be donated to Yeop's favorite children's charity, asking him to at least try. Yeop was annoyed by the situation, but considered their long-standing friendship. Reluctantly, he accepted, but warned it would only be this once, much to Park Jin-tae's delight. The president leaned in to kiss him in gratitude, but Yeop pushed him away, saying it was fine. He then set the condition that he would not participate if any American players were killed. Park Jin-tae agreed with a smile, promising he would keep his word. With the matter settled, the president invited them to dinner, stating he would cover the bill. He led them out of the room, mentioning he knew a good tuna sashimi restaurant. But as he left, Park Jin-tae looked back with a serious expression, affirming his intent to keep his promise. At his desk, a document revealed the results of a match simulation where Korea lost all sets, and he offered a preemptive apology. A news anchor announced that the Korean Association confirmed Yeop had accepted the U.S. team's offer. On another channel, a host reported that Yeop might participate in the battlefield. Breaking news highlighted Yeop's participation in the Rank A match. At home, Yeop watched the incessant coverage about him, complaining his show wasn't airing because of it. Yeop grumbled that the old man was causing him too much trouble and decided he should cut ties with him. Then, he fumed upon discovering his favorite show show had been replaced by breaking news about him. He went to the window and lamented his bad luck. A noise from outside caught his attention. He leaned in to see what was happening in the training area. A person sped past a cone at high speed. It was a woman moving swiftly under a man's supervision. Seoman observed the scene. The man threw a ball toward her. She intercepted it in the air with her weapon. He then realized Hayan was training. Her father, Big Jeho, congratulated her on her good reaction time, but said she needed to be faster to help her teammates. Seoman approached, remarking that Jeho was picking on her again. He then activated his scanner eyes. Big Hayan's analysis displayed her attributes, revealing her teleportation and rope abilities. Seoman Yap's analysis revealed that Hayan's agility had already reached its maximum potential. He also concluded that her development potential was lower than her father's at his peak, so she would never perform as he expected. But her stamina and strength attributes could exceed Jeho's limits, making his training method unsuitable for her. On the lawn, Hayan fell exhausted and asked for a short break to rest. She turned and was surprised to see Seoman who assessed that at this rate, she wouldn't be able to kill a single American team player. He watched her intently. Hayan asked if he'd seen her train, and Seoman replied he didn't think she needed to train her agility further. But Baek Jeho disagreed, saying she still needed to improve a bit, and with more training she'd get there. Then Seoman turned to him, stating that Hayan was not like him. He advised him to stop agility and speed training, explaining that her limit for those attributes was lower than his. He continued, asserting that her agility was already at its peak, as was her whip usage. Seoman explained that while she had speed abilities, she and her father were different. He then turned to Hayan, who looked at him with curiosity. He asked what she'd do after ensnaring an opponent with her whip, and she replied she'd pull them off balance or throw them to her teammates. But Seoman said that was wrong, and that she needed to finish them off. Seoman explained that it was inefficient for her to only use her father's style, as she had no one to finish the job for her. He took her whip and sword, stating he'd show her how it's done, and that it wasn't difficult. Then, he approached a training dummy. With one fluid motion, he lassoed the target with the whip. He explained that once an opponent was ensnared, one should advance quickly. In an instant, he sliced the dummy in half with the sword. He turned to Hayan and her father, asking if they understood. Both remained silent, observing the scene. He stated that she couldn't kill anyone with just the whip. She needed strength and sword training. Seoman then changed her stance to close-quarters combat and questioned if the trainer understood. He suggested they start with 500 strength exercises, leaving Hayan and her father shocked. With an imposing posture, he ordered them to begin the 500 strength exercises immediately. He reminded them they had only 14 days until the Rank A match. At the U.S. national team hotel, a man named John Kim praised Gerald Walker for his improvement in just a few days. Walker asked if the difference was really that big, and his agent confirmed it. John Kim commented that he thought it was foolish when Walker switched shields right after meeting Seoman but he admitted that, observing him over the past few days, it seemed he'd found a way to overcome his weakness and reach the top 3. The agent warned him it would be difficult to adjust and face fast opponents like Nathan, but it would be good in the long run. Then Walker asked how much his improvement was worth in terms of money. John Kim estimated it at least $10 million, a value he could secure in his next salary negotiation if he adapted to the new style. The $10 million figure echoed in Walker's mind. Seeing a news report about Seoman on TV, he ordered them to send him $10 million immediately. His agent was shocked, but Walker explained it was a consulting fee. He extended his hand, stating he would drag him onto the battlefield anyway. He touched the wall, telling Seoman to wait just a little longer. The match began at the Seoul International Battle Stadium. Finally, the day arrived for the historic Rank A match between Korea and the USA. Two commentators began the broadcast, expressing the public's anxiety for the outcome. One of them mentioned that the dream confrontation between Seoman and America would be decided today. Next, he presented the full lineup of the Korean team that would fight in the arena. The camera then showed all members of the United States team. Baek Hayan was introduced as the close combat fighter and ace of the Korean team. On the other side, Gerald Walker stood out as the tank and ace of the American team. Seoman watched from the stands, while the commentator highlighted Hayan's first match in her new position. The camera's focus shifted to Seoman face. It was announced that the match's dungeon would be an ancient castle guarded by skeletons. The first boss in the player's path was the Skeleton Warrior. On the second floor, competitors would encounter the Death Knight. And on the final floor, Dragon Vaughn and the Lich awaited them. For new spectators, the commentator explained the vital rules of the game. Then, the Korean team players entered the arena. The American team also made their entrance, and the commentator wondered who would emerge victorious. The announcer declared the first game was about to begin. Both teams rushed into the dungeon. The American team quickly encountered a group of skeletons. Walker faced the approaching monsters. They began their hunt with perfectly synchronized movements, and Walker destroyed the first skeleton. The commentator observed that the American team had comparatively slow mobility, but after finishing their hunt, they always demonstrated an impenetrable defense. Hayan gripped her weapon firmly, preparing to act. As he described the American team, the Korean team advanced at high speed. Suddenly, one of the commentators expressed surprise at the strategy. The Korean team advanced through the skeletons without attacking them. They kept running, ignoring the monsters in the second area too. Jeho watched his teams rush, thinking they just needed to keep going. He believed that if the plan worked, they would have a chance to win. The commentator explained that Korea, usually opting for a long game, was now heading straight for the boss with an aggressive plan. The risk was high, but success would earn them a large number of hunting points. Defeating the boss would cause the first floor to close in a few minutes, and that could disrupt the American team's plans. At this exact moment, the Korean team's icon reached the bosses. The Korean team encountered the first floor boss, the Skeleton Warrior. Hayan and Jeho prepared for battle. One of the American players asked Walker to wait, as an unexpected situation had arisen. Walker asked Paulward if the reconnaissance was complete while the Korean team faced the boss. He then questioned what this unexpected situation was. The player reported that the Korean team had begun hunting the first floor boss, adopting an unusual strategy. A teammate suggested rushing to the second floor before the first closed, but Walker decided to end the hunt and head to the boss area. He turned to a female teammate and said that, not being fast, he'd need to borrow her ability. The Korean team was about to defeat the Skeleton Warrior. They advanced, believing Hayan could finish him. The leader ordered everyone to hold their positions and provide cover for her as she jumped, but something advanced toward her at high speed. She barely had time to react. Then, Walker hit her squarely. She was thrown backward, wondering where he had come from. The Korean team reacted to Walker's sudden appearance. Jeho understood that he had used a teammate's ability to launch himself through the air and arrive so quickly. The impact slammed her against the dungeon wall. A notification announced Baek Haeon's death. Walker admitted that the strategy of focusing on the boss wasn't bad, but he stated that even if the plan had succeeded, the outcome wouldn't change. The other members of the American team arrived behind the Skeleton Warrior. They then began to attack the weakened boss. A notification announced that the first floor boss had been defeated, and the area would close in 10 minutes. Walker then decided it was time to end the match. The American players advanced and attacked the remaining members of the Korean team. The commentator narrated that after the sudden appearance, the American team eliminated their opponents in a flash. The Korean team lost the boss fight and was nearing complete annihilation. Walker prepared for the final blow. The last Korean player lay on the ground, unable to react. He then eliminated the last opponent. The scoreboard showed the American team won the first set with a perfect 11-0 game. Hayan walked down the corridor, thinking it had happened again. She stopped in front of a door, lamenting the defeat. Then she peeked through the door, feeling bad for not having had a chance to fight, even with her uncle's help. A man asked for everyone's attention, as he had something to say. Hayan watched him, surprised by what was happening. Seomun Yeop said that while watching the match, his eyes nearly popped out of his head, so they'd better follow his advice. When a player tried to mention that their coach was Jeho, he told him to shut up. Yeop then explained he was doing this because, at this rate, he himself would end up having to compete with the team. He continued, saying the team tried a winning play, but lacked the skill to succeed, and their average level was far below their opponents. He stated that, with their current skill level, their chance of victory was exactly 0%. But he said it would be shameful to give up without a fight, so he would teach them how to at least take down Walker. Seomun Yeop began by explaining that Martha Bourne's palace was a dungeon he and the current association director targeted when they were younger. He stated it wasn't too difficult to attack, but the bones on the third level were a nuisance. But, judging by the team's skill level, it would be a miracle if they got that far, so he asked them to focus on the game they had just lost. He then commented that the strategy used in the first set wasn't bad. That is, of course, only if they were able to complete the given tasks. Pointing at the players, he began to speak about the vanguard positions. He criticized the team for having gone straight to the boss room without scouting the opponent's positioning. The rear guard should have provided cover as soon as the vanguard fell, but everyone stood still when Hayan was killed by Walker. The reason they kept losing 11-0 was because they hadn't mastered even the basics. He shook his head, saying he couldn't believe they were the national team, and felt sorry for Jeho. Seomun Yeop then turned, stating there was nothing more to say about the first set. He got straight to the point, saying he would tell them the strategy for the second set. The second set then began. As soon as the game started, the American team advanced and split into two. They would use a 6-5 formation, with the faster group securing the hunting grounds first. Walker led the second group, focusing on the hunt. The strategy made the most of the team's ace players' abilities. In the audience, the public reacted with surprise to the Korean team's play. The commentator explained that Hayan had suddenly disappeared and returned. Next, the entire Korean team began to run through the dungeon again. The commentators questioned the new tactic, as Korea had always used defensive strategies, highlighting Hayan's unexpected position change. Yeop watched with a smile, saying they were doing well. He continued watching, as the plan depended on them following his orders exactly. Only then would they find an opening. Hayan advanced, ready to ensure success this time. One of the American Vanguard players stopped at a corner to scout. He informed Walker that he couldn't see the Korean team nearby. He assumed that, since the dungeon had a single path, the Korean team must be focusing on the second half of the match. To Walker, it was clear they had changed their game plan after the disaster in the first set. He held his ground, knowing that at this rate, it would only be a matter of time until Yeop entered the arena. Something shattered on the cave wall behind Walker. He turned in surprise, questioning what that noise was. Then, a large explosion occurred on the dungeon wall. The entire Korean team emerged from the debris, flying toward them. They landed and quickly surrounded the American team. The American team was surprised, and Walker wondered how they got there. In a flashback, Yeop instructed the scouts to go first, and Hayan, being the fastest, to check the opponent's situation. He continued, telling them not to kill any monsters or bosses if Walker's group had fewer than 5 players, leaving the team surprised. He explained that it was common knowledge Martha Bourne's palace had a one-way path, but he revealed the existence of a secret passage with a teleportation point, perfect for ambushes, and instructed Hayan to use it. The entrance looked like any other wall, but Yeop asserted he would tell them how to find it. Through that passage, they could reach the American team's position undetected. He ordered all 11 to rush through that route and attack the American team that had split up to hunt. Back in the present, the Korean team emerged from the explosion. They then attacked the American team from the rear. Hayan landed in front of one of the American players, and Yeop's instruction was clear. When fighting Walker, the team should aim for his legs. In a flashback, Hayan questioned the tactic, but Yeop explained that current conditions made his legs weaker. He detailed that changing to a smaller shield left him with more exposed area, and he still didn't seem fully accustomed to it. The pressure of no casualties, the ambush, and confronting an Esper would be a problem for the American team. Yeop then asked them to trust and follow his instructions. Back in the present, Hayan thanked her uncle for his help. The Korean team advanced before the Americans could form, and Hayan received power from the team's support. One of her teammates channeled their power and transferred it directly to her. She advanced toward Walker, but he defended the attack and eliminated 2 Korean players. He then realized she had bypassed him using teleportation. The real target was the American team's support, whom she attacked from behind. A notification announced that Hayan had secured 2 eliminations. Walker realized the real target was the support in the rear. He then attacked and brought down another Korean player. After securing his 3rd elimination, Walker ordered the Vanguard to return immediately. The current situation was 3 American players against 8 Koreans, as the Vanguard would take time to return. But Walker stated that a team like that was easy pickings and attacked with his axe. He spun and eliminated another opponent, achieving his 4th kill. Hayan rushed toward him from behind. He turned, surprised not to see her behind him. Then she appeared from below and struck his leg. He reeled from the impact and Hayan moved aside. Walker dropped to his knees on the ground. The American team was holding up well, but one of the players was hit by a surprise attack. The Korean team used its numerical advantage, sacrificing 7 players to eliminate 3 American team members. A Korean player approached Walker, who lay fallen on the ground. Walker questioned if Yeop trained her, noticing the sudden change in her combat style. She then pointed her sword at him. He glared at her, admitting it was impressive. The crowd roared at the extraordinary turnaround, as the scoreboard showed the Korean team had eliminated 5 American players. Jeho remained silent, surprised by the outcome. Yeop relaxed in his seat, asked him if he saw what happened, and added that he would help him get Walker. The commentators celebrate the Korean team's incredible, unexpected performance. Unfortunately, the match ended with the American team winning 2-0. One commentator laments that if the Korean team hadn't encountered the returning American group, the match would have been more interesting. Walker observes the scoreboard, reflecting on the Korean team's performance. He glances at the second set's results. The Korean national team faced a strong American team, yet they achieved an impressive 5 eliminations. The commentators agree that the match's highlight was the Korean team's surprise appearance by breaking through the wall. The driving force behind this surprising turnaround was a specific player. She was responsible for 4 of her team's 5 total eliminations. The crowd cheers for the Korean team's ace, Hayan. XBC sports anchor Oh Ji-ye introduces herself to interview coach Jeho. She asks his thoughts on the match, noting the national team showed a different side than usual. He responds that, despite their loss, it was an important learning experience and a great motivator for the team. The reporter then questions him about how he devised the memorable strategy of using the secret passage in the second set. Jeho admits it was an impressive strategy, since the dungeon was known for having only one path. He then looks aside and reveals the truth. The team received help with the second set's strategy. Manhwa observes the interview from afar. He grumbles about Jeho's attempts to convince him. He realizes the coach is still trying to persuade him to participate. Hayan steps up for her interview. The reporter praises her as the most impactful player and asks about her training. She responds that her uncle has been training her a lot lately and that she changed positions at his recommendation. Manhwa watches the scene. Frustrated, he sighs, wondering why both the father and daughter are talking about him, but he concludes it doesn't matter, as it's the truth. Park Jin-tae approaches him, commenting that he still gets annoyed when embarrassed. Manhwa points to the interview area, asking why the association president isn't there. Park Jin-tae replies, "It's better to let others handle it," and Manhwa asks what he wants now. Park Jin-tae says he came for nostalgia, as only a few people, including them both, knew about that secret passage. Manhwa admits he devised the second set's strategy, but found it a bit low to use a secret passage in a sports match. He explains that to avoid being forced to play, he used a method he trusted more, instead of a guerrilla attack. The president comments that he heard Manhwa trained Hayan and that she found her talent, but Manhwa replies that's nothing new. He stands, saying he enjoyed seeing one of his strategies in action after so long and that his talent is too precious to waste. Manhwa agrees, saying he's truly incredible. Park Jin-tae then asks what he thinks about using that talent more. Manhwa questions what he's talking about since he won the bet, but the president makes one last request, promising never to bother him again if he refuses. He reveals that the Korean Professional Battleground League season will start soon. Manhwa asks if he wants him as a professional league athlete. Park Jin-tae denies it, saying he wouldn't make such an unreasonable request. He explains he's thinking of holding a charity match with famous players before the league starts and would like Manhwa to participate. He expects Manhwa to refuse the proposal, but Manhwa replies he'll think about it, to Park Jin-tae's surprise. Park Jin-tae is surprised because Manhwa always refuses what he doesn't want to do, but he concludes it's nothing major. Manhwa explains that watching Hayan play made him curious, and as entertaining as TV shows are, they're different from real battles, and since dungeons no longer exist, this is the only place he can fight. Park Jin-tae gets excited and ruffles his hair, saying that's the spirit. He shows on his phone that the rank A match footage surpassed 10 million views in an hour. The video has over 11 million views, and comments praise the performance of the Korean team, Hayan, and Manhwa. Manhwa gets annoyed and tells him to calm down. He steps away, commenting on the president's strength, who apologizes for his excitement. But Manhwa corrects him, saying he hasn't confirmed his participation yet. Park Jin-tae cheers up again, saying it's amazing he's even considering the idea. Manhwa questions if the professional league isn't about to start. He finds holding a charity match so close to the league's start suspicious, and Park Jin-tae realizes he's figured out the plan. Manhwa then states that if he's to participate in the charity match, he has conditions. Park Jin-tae stares at him, ready to hear his demands. The association president promises Manhwa that if he plays the charity match, he'll give him whatever he wants. With a smile, Manhwa accepts the proposal. Back in the training area, Jeho approaches with his sword in hand. He walks towards Manhwa, who awaits him with a spear on his shoulders. He asks what's happening. Manhwa explains that since the association president accepted all his conditions, he agreed to participate in the charity match. He continues, saying he got a second chance at life and planned to spend it watching TV. Jeho approaches him, but since he decided to do this, he wants to at least prepare a little. Manhwa criticizes the national team's training, and Jeho apologizes for training them poorly. The coach questions why he's being dragged into this, as it's great that Manhwa wants to play again. But Manhwa responds that he can't be the only one to suffer, and besides Hayan, there are no other good players. He asks Jeho to leave him alone, as it's been 17 years since he last fought. Jeho reassures him, promising to train him until he gets back in shape. Even reluctantly, Jeho listens to his friend's confident words. Jeho activates his scanner eyes and analyzes Jeho's attributes. He concludes that despite being weaker from lack of training, it will be easy for him to regain his status to some extent. With a smile, Jeho warns that starting tomorrow, he'll put him through hellish training. Jeho realizes he's doomed. In a flashback, Jeho sets his two conditions for Park Jin-tae, the first being to play on the same team as Hayan, and the second, that Jeho also participates. The president calculates that with 2 of the previous 7 heroes, they'll secure many sponsors. He then makes a call and asks for a favor. News of Jeho, Jeho, and Hayan's participation in the charity game spreads, and the countdown to the event begins. Jeho replied that his cunning technique required him to be at least slightly faster than his opponent. His trainer then scolded him for acting that way, even after recalling the lesson. But Yeop simply agreed to try and be faster. In position, his trainer prepared to attack. He then advanced towards Seomin Yeop with his sword drawn. Yeop jumped backward to dodge the blow. Next, he blocked the attack with his shield. The man continued to deliver blows against him. After the training, he asked how it went, and Seomin Yeop replied that he felt good this time. His trainer commented that 17 years had passed and asked for a break. He stretched and complained that he was tired, as it was difficult to train again at his age. Seomin Yeop stated that it was just a warm-up and told him to stop complaining, but the man retorted that they had been training for 8 hours. The older man said he didn't care and needed to watch his show, reminding Yeop that he wasn't the same as before and needed rest. Seomin Yeop informed him that he had an appointment and wouldn't be able to watch the show anyway. Their destination was the imposing building of the Korean Battlefield Association. There, Yoo Hyun-soo, the technical team manager, greeted them and confirmed that Seomin Yeop had come for the avatar test. Yoo Hyun-soo introduced Mr. Brown Tenor from the World Battlefield Association, who would oversee today's test procedures. Before they began, Seomin Yeop said he had a question. He questioned the need for more tests, but Hyun-soo explained that he had skipped the athletic ability portion and gone straight to avatar creation. To ensure there would be no problems using the avatar, they needed specific data on his physical abilities. Seomin Yeop was surprised by the technology's precision. Hyun-soo confirmed that the system scanned the player's entire physical constitution and reflected it in the avatar. He added that the technology could even manifest Esper powers not yet discovered by the user, which Yeop found interesting. Then, Hyun-soo revealed that the battlefield system held many secrets and was created from the Esper ability of a specific individual. Yeop found this strange and accused them of pretending to be the Burrowers. He then asked if the Burrowers weren't behind the World Battlefield Association, but Yoo Hyun-soo denied it. Seomin Yeop stated that if that were the case, he wished they would appear right now, causing a hesitant Hyun-soo to rush them to the measurements. In a new room, Hyun-soo announced that they would begin by measuring his strength, agility, and aura levels. He was instructed to give his best to obtain an accurate reading and ensure ideal synchronization with his avatar. The first test was for strength, and Seomin Yeop approached a machine. The test began as soon as the lever was pulled and he held it. Seomin Yeop pulled the lever with all his strength. The lever then slipped from his hand, and the machine processed the information. The panel displayed the number 813, and he was instructed to try again. After 2 more attempts, the results varied between 819 and 8117. He then observed his data and noted that this was the score for a strength of 79. As Yeop asked what the next test was, Yoo Hyun-soo commented that his strength was average for a hero. The next test would measure agility, requiring him to alternately press 2 switches on the walls until the final alarm. Seomin Yeop prepared and agreed to start the challenge. He concentrated intensely the moment the test began. Yeop moved quickly from side to side, pressing the switches. The observers were surprised, and Hyun-soo questioned how a tanker could have such high agility. The measurement was completed, and he stopped in the middle of the room. Seomin Yeop asked for his score and found out he had marked a surprising 963. He commented that, with a little more effort, he could surpass 970, and decided to try again. After the second attempt concluded, the new score displayed was 971. The observers were shocked to see that he had actually surpassed 970 points. Seomin Yeop asked what the highest record was, and Hyun-soo revealed that someone on the team had scored 1007, making Yeop question if it was Nathan Bernard. He explained that he knew him from the videos Jeho sent him when he decided to participate in the charity match. Yeop commented that he was curious because Nathan was fast enough to compete with Jeho at his peak, as it wasn't common to find someone with 100 agility points. With a snap of his fingers, he decided to go one more time, now aiming for a score of 975. He positioned himself in the center of the room. Then, he focused for the new attempt. For some reason, on that specific day, he felt in his best condition for the test. The test then began, and his eyes shined. He hit the first switch on the wall. Next, he moved at high speed between the targets. Spectators noticed he was even faster than before. The measurement was completed, and he stopped abruptly. He breathed heavily after the test ended. While the observers questioned the score, Yu Hyun-soo wondered how that could be possible. Catching his breath, Seo-min Yap asked how he did, believing he had been faster this time. The score of 1007 appeared on the panel, matching Nathan's record, the fastest Esper on the planet. He then wondered how he achieved the same score since his agility was 97, slightly lower than Nathan's and Jeho's at their peak. Yap realized he seemed to have exceeded his own abilities at that moment. Then, he asked to test his strength one more time, as there was something he needed to verify. With the method being the same as before, he focused to begin when ready. He pulled the lever with all the strength he could muster. The observers reacted with surprise as his score had increased. When he asked for the result, he found out he had scored 890. A much higher value than before. Asked if he was finally warmed up, he replied that perhaps he was more focused. He observed his own hand, wondering if he had gotten stronger, as he had demonstrated more power than his limit. But he dismissed the idea, for when using his scanner eyes, there was no change in his abilities. Although something felt different, the sensation was definitely familiar to him, stemming from a memory of the past. He had felt that once before, when he fought alone in the last dungeon. He understood that, facing death, he was able to achieve superhuman focus. His mental focus surpassed human limits and strengthened his other abilities, concluding that focus must have this kind of effect. But he regretted having no more reasons to fight and merely strengthening himself uselessly with his focus and immortality. It was almost as if he was being pushed back into the battlefield. Finally, they began the aura level test, and he was instructed to look at the marble sphere in front of him. Placing his hands on the object, he found it an interesting tool. As in the past, they only estimated aura in weapons. Yu Hyun-soo explained that, since aura levels are primarily determined by innate abilities, this is what they focus on most when measuring rising stars. Yap recalled that when he awakened his scanner eyes, his aura was at 96, and he had tried everything to fill the remaining 4 points. He then positioned his hand over the sphere. The observers were shocked, wondering how high his aura level would rise. With his aura currently at 100, he channeled his energy into the object. That was the highest level a human could reach. After the measurement was completed, the sphere changed color. Brown Tenor reacted in disbelief. The panel displayed a score of 1030. Seo-min Yap asked what the result was, and Hyun-soo stammered, informing him that he had just surpassed the highest human record. The observers react in shock that he has surpassed the highest human record. With a smile, Seo-min Yap gives a thumbs up and asks who they think he is. Yu Hyun-soo informs him that the previous record belonged to Siulan, one of his fellow 7 heroes, surprising Yeop with the news. Hyun-soo comments that he never thought that record would be broken, but admits the girl possessed an impressive amount of aura. He recalls that despite Shulan's weak mental strength, her confidence was enormous, leading them to argue constantly. The test concludes, but Hyun-soo says there's one more thing to inform them of, and Seo-min Yeop asks what it is. His immortality skill cannot be used in matches, which he had already expected, as it would result in an automatic victory. The association apologizes for the unfairness and offers compensation, but he states he doesn't care about the limitation. He accepts the money, yet reveals he no longer needs to use his immortality. Elsewhere, a leader addresses a crowd, claiming they will be saved by that person. He then announces that a revelation proving their faith has finally arrived. The leader raises a document and tells his subjects to contemplate that person. The paper is a newspaper article about Seo-min Yeop's immortality, where he is hailed as their savior. The crowd, in ecstasy, shouts Seo-min Yeop's name, declaring it's time to prove their faith in him. Upon leaving the building, he encounters a massive crowd of hooded figures awaiting him. Seo-min Yeop turns and asks who those people are. The crowd unanimously acclaims his name, calling him their savior and the hero who will save the world. His companion explains that they are the Seo-min Foundation, a false religion that worships him as a god. Yeop repeats the foundation's name, trying to recall something. He then remembers seeing them outside the hospital, and his companion confirms it. The man explains that they believe the world will end again, and that Yeop will return to save the chosen ones. Seo-min Yeop calls them crazy, but his companion says he thought so too, until Yeop actually came back to life. Now they walk around saying they're happy, just waiting for the world's end. He decides he should teach those lunatics a lesson, but his companion stops him, asking him to leave them be. Yeop ignores him and moves forward. He leaps and lands on a wall, high above the crowd. Authoritatively, he shouts for everyone to be silent. The crowd, however, continues to cry for salvation, making him shout again, questioning if they're deaf. Finally, silence settles over the area, and he comments that they're quiet now. He addresses the crowd, saying he perfectly understands how they all feel about him, which prompts them to call him their savior again. ManhwaCapped points at the crowd and orders them to stop with that nonsense and disappear, calling them lunatics. The hooded followers react with surprise to his words. He then questions if they don't have jobs and demands to know who the leader of that foundation is, threatening him. The crowd starts whispering that the savior is pushing them away to test their faith. They then unite in their decision to show him their faith, leaving ManhwaCapped confused. Everyone starts chanting ManhwaCapped's name in unison. He wonders what's wrong with these people as they continue calling out to him. His companion observes the scene and realizes the situation is bad. Capped then gives them a 10-second ultimatum to leave, or he will assault them. He charges into the crowd while his companion shouts for him to calm down. Several Foundation members are left unconscious on the ground. Sitting on a pile of bodies, he holds a boy and asks if he'll continue following him, but the boy tearfully denies it. Capped advises him to ignore those people and tells him to be careful descending. He jumps off the pile of bodies, stating he's finished sorting things out and they can go back to training. His companion calls him, and ManhwaCapped turns to ask what he wants. The man tells ManhwaCapped that he's the craziest person he's ever met, but Capped thanks him for the compliment and points to his followers as the true lunatics. Concerned about reporters returning, his companion suggests they go inside, but Capped claims if they come back, he'll just assault them and send them away. The elder warns him that this will only attract more people, but ManhwaCapped reveals that's how he got rid of the stalkers who wanted to know about his orphanage days. Meanwhile, one of the followers thrown into the air flies over the city, questioning if he truly is the savior. Capped complains, not understanding why people are so interested in others' lives, and his companion agrees. Suddenly, he stops, prompting his friend to ask what happened. A strange energy is seen emanating from a distant building. ManhwaCapped says it's nothing, and the scene fast-forwards to the day of the charity match at Incheon International Airport. The arrival of Joe Fellman, the American field agent, causes a commotion, with everyone commenting that important figures are coming for ManhwaCapped's match. Fellman comments that it's been 15 years since his last visit, and that the U.S. field agency only became the best because it recruited many Korean espers. His assistant laments losing Mr. Beck, a true diamond. But Fellman explains that, initially, none of the 7 heroes were interested in the battlefield. She continues, saying that young Julan showed some interest, but gave up when her esper power was downgraded. Fellman recalls that the footage of Julan's avatar test was shocking, and that her extinction ray at full power would have ended an 11-on-11 match in 3 seconds. He then clenches his fist and declares that, since this is a chance to get the strongest esper on Earth, he won't miss the opportunity to recruit ManhwaCapped. His assistant interrupts him and points to a group of reporters approaching. Suddenly, Joe Fellman's attention is diverted to an approaching man. Jake Rand, the European field agent, arrives at the airport, immediately recognized by Fellman. Rand approaches and greets Joe Fellman. He suggests they fight fairly and honestly this time, but Fellman knows it won't be easy. As reporters take photos, tension rises between the two, with Fellman determined not to let his prize be stolen. Elsewhere, 2 men observe the scene. One mentions that the person responsible for destroying their dungeon business is now venturing onto the battlefield. The Moreau brothers, owners of the Paris Lumiere Battlefield Club, decide they cannot simply ignore ManhwaCapped. They enthusiastically declare that they will make him sign with them at any cost. The 3 groups now face each other in the airport lobby. All exchange glances, determined not to yield. A palpable tension settles between them. They are resolved not to allow ManhwaCapped to be taken by anyone else. The sound of high heels echoes through the airport, making everyone stop. The continent's untouchable, a walking tactical weapon, makes her entrance. The youngest of the 7 heroes, Julan, reveals she came to see a boy she knows. At the event location, a crowd gathers under a fireworks display, and someone comments on how packed the place is. Inside the arena, a spectator laments that the world's population didn't decrease during the war, but is reprimanded by another. The first man doesn't care, but is advised to be more careful since it's an important event, as a limousine arrives on the red carpet. He merely says he'll think about it as he exits the vehicle. ManhwaCapped steps out of the limousine and walks down the red carpet. With a smile, he says it's time to have some fun now. As the crowd cheers him, Jeho questions why they're so excited about a guy like him. ManhwaCapped replies that it's all thanks to Jeho's hard work to make him look presentable. Reporters rush towards them, requesting a brief interview with Mr. ManhwaCapped and Mr. Beck Jeho. Jeho pushes him toward the press, telling him not to say anything strange. Surrounded, he gets annoyed at being used as bait, while a reporter questions him about the attack on the Seoman Foundation invitation followers. Questions continue about the altercations he caused, his feelings about the match, and Shulan's arrival after 17 years. He's surprised to hear Shulan's name, and the reporter confirms she arrived in Korea today to watch the charity match. Seomin-yap wonders why she would come, and the man explains she's here to find a boy she knows who's in the match. He then realizes that when she says boy, she might be referring to him. He taps a nearby wall as he enters the corridor. As he walks, other competitors comment on finally seeing the real version of the statue and wonder how skilled he is. Approaching Jeho, he asks if he heard the news. Seomun-yap informs him that Julan is in Korea, and Jeho comments that it finally happened. A colleague advises him to be careful and carry a shield wherever he goes. He remembers being a bit rude to her in the past, but Jeho corrects him, saying he used to curse at her until she cried. Seomin-yap doubts she would seek revenge now, but wonders if she'd use her extinction ray on him, while Jeho says he doesn't know if they've forgotten with time. Jeho then reminds him that he's the exact same guy who used to pester her. The memory transports him back 17 years ago, when everything was in full swing. The Chinese Esper Shulan was one of the 7 heroes chosen to fight in the last dungeon. As the only daughter of wealthy parents with great powers, she lived under government protection. The 17-year-old girl was raised like a queen, but that type of person, who cried because they couldn't do better, was what Seomin-yap hated most. That's why Seomin-yap pestered her, telling her to think before acting and questioning if her head was just for show. He called her slow and poked her, asking why she didn't use her powers when told. Yap claimed a headless chicken would be better than her, and that the least she could do was use her Esper power well. The young girl trembled as she stared at him. Back in the present, Jeho and his colleagues shake their heads, saying they'll end up having a second funeral for him. Jeho decides to leave that for later, as they have a more urgent matter to deal with. He then turns to the group of players and asks for everyone's attention. He begins to explain how the charity match should work, assuming everyone already knows. Since there's a completely new player on the battlefield, Jeho quickly explains the match procedure. The charity match will be played between the Love and Hope teams. Team Love is the national selection, while Team Hope consists of invited players, with the exception of Hayan. In contrast, Team Hope will have Jeho as the national team coach. Seomin-yap will also be part of this team. Jeho admits being a bit worried, as it's been a while since he held a weapon, but he hopes they'll take good care of him. The captain of Team Hope, Park Chulho, assures him they will do their utmost. Seomin-yap observes that, even after some time, Jeho is probably 1,000 times better than them. He analyzes Jeho and Hayan's data, concluding that with specifications like those, the 3 of them will be fine. The rest of the team, however, is not noteworthy. His attention is then drawn to one of the players. He analyzes Choi Hyuk's data, while the player asks the coach to take care of them. His special abilities are Focused Aura, which quickly concentrates aura into a weapon, and Reinforced Durability. His maximum strength is 90. He concludes that the player can become a decent tanker and calls him over for a chat. Choi Hyuk formally introduces himself as a proximity dealer. Seomin-yap questions if he heard correctly, and the young man proudly confirms he is a proximity dealer, represented by Sangsung Spritz. He then explains that he wanted to be a tanker like Mr. Seomin-yap, but became a dealer due to his short stature. Asked about his Esper ability, Choi Hyuk says he can focus his aura on weapons to attack, and that's it. Seomin-yap realizes he hasn't yet awakened his Reinforced Durability ability, which is why he became a dealer. In a flashback, a coach tells young Choi Hyuk that he's too small and fast to be a tanker. The man then designates him as a dealer. Back in the present, Seomin-yap asks Hayan to bring him a shield, and she dashes off to get it. He then hands a large pot lid to Choi Hyuk. Without much time, Seomin-yap begins teaching the basics, instructing him to keep the shield fixed to his chest and move to attack and retreat. The young man tries to argue that he's a dealer, but Yap stares at him and asks if he's talking back. The other players observe the scene, surprised that he changed the position of a player he just met. Choi Hyuk turns to Jeho for help, but the coach remains silent. Jeho ignores him and announces the team formation with 4 tankers, 6 dealers, and 1 support. Realizing he's been abandoned by the coach, Choi Hyuk despairs as Jeho announces it's time for everyone to gear up. Seomin-yap is surprised by the armor's lightness, and Jeho confirms it's as durable as war-era armor and asks if it's comfortable. Jeho asks how he's doing, and Seomin-yup replies he just feels strange, having never thought about wearing that uniform. Jeho reassures him about the weapons, as they were only slightly adjusted from the originals. Seomin-yup then inspects his shield. He praises the spear's mechanism, and Jeho comments they paid special attention to it. Jeho calls them historical weapons that saved the world, but Seomin-yup corrects him, saying they were made for him less than a year ago. The coach warns him not to let his guard down because even though he's strong, he fought monsters and burrowers. Those players were trained to fight humans and have much more game experience than them. With a smile, Seomin-yup replies, "He'll remember that, Coach Baek." He then gives a thumbs up, ready to see the experienced player's skill. The crowd in the stands goes wild. The scoreboard announces the clash between Team Hope and Team Love. As the teams line up, a player observes that up close, the national team looks different. Seomin-yup notes that the opposing team has a higher average skill, but they seem mediocre and without special talents. He asks Jeho if they score players when recruiting them, and the coach confirms they analyze a final score across various categories. A colleague explains that since the score is based on general grades, the opposing team wouldn't have anyone particularly talented in a specific area. Seomin-yup's attention is then drawn to one of the players. He spots a young man chewing gum in the middle of the opposing team. His analysis reveals that while the player's overall levels aren't bad, his focus is very low. He then wonders if that young man was also spoiled by a wealthy family. The youth confronts him, asking what he's looking at and calling him old. The young man recognizes him as Seomin-yup. He recalls complaining about his interference during the A-match game against America. On that occasion, he commented that Seomin-yup didn't even know what the battlefield was. Seomin-yup asks a teammate to switch places with him for a second. He then approaches and tells Shim Young-soo that he seems to have a big problem with him. The young man confirms, mentioning his attitude during the last match. He continues, saying that pretending to know things without ever playing doesn't look good, but Seomin-yup just laughs. The younger player questions what's so funny. Seomin-yup then asks what his father does, and he replies that he is the association's vice president. An announcement calls all players to enter the field of play. Seomin-yup calls him a yuppie and tells them to go in, but the young man grabs him, questioning the reason for the nickname and the question about his father. He replies he was curious what kind of father raised an idiotic bastard like him. Seomin-yup reveals that having had a difficult past, he hates spoiled children without resilience. With a smirk, he makes an offensive gesture and states that, thanks to the young man, he now feels motivated to participate in the battlefield, declaring the young man is dead. The player's entrance is announced as Seomin-yup's name echoes through the arena. It is then declared that the awaited moment has arrived, with Seomin-yup finally entering the arena as a player. A narrator comments that, despite being a charity game, the match will be unparalleled in spectator numbers. Many celebrities are in the audience, including Gerald Walker from the American national team and agents Joe Fellman and Jake Rand. Sayulan, one of the 7 heroes, and the Moro brothers also watch as the charity match begins. They then reveal that the field for the first match is the Spiral Cave of Aza. The arena is a 3-circular zone dungeon with a secret passage, inhabited by monsters like skeleton arachnes and serpents. The match will be between Team Love, composed of current national selection members, and Team Hope, featuring the hero from 17 years ago. 10 minutes earlier, a man begins briefing his team. He explains that the starting points are Zone 5 for Team Hope and Zone 1 for Team Love, on opposite sides of the arena. The main team will hunt in 5-2, while Seomin-yup will head to 5-3 to defeat the Serpent boss alone. Serpent's defeat will collapse the area, so they need to synchronize the hunt, and Seomin-yup agrees to take it easy. After that, they will clear Zone 6 and use the passage there to enter the smaller circle. That point will be the first encounter with the opposition, and he, Hayan, and Seomin-yup will contain them. For Seomin-yup, a direct fight from the start would result in victory, but Jeho has become cowardly as a coach. A best-of-3 match gives Seomin-yup the opportunity to analyze the battlefield in the first round. In Zone 5-1, Team Hope's starting point, the team gathers inside a cave. The captain then orders everyone to take their positions. Hayan, the main damage dealer from the rear, takes her position. Jeho, the support damage dealer, and Seomin-yup, the frontline tank, also prepare. All frontline tanks, including Choi Hyuk, join Seomin-yup. Seomin-yup then greets someone, saying it's been a long time. One of the team members points to the cave ceiling, which is completely covered in spiders. The arachnid creatures stir in the darkness. In Zone 1-1, Team Love begins its hunt against the spiders. Team Love's captain, Chae Woo-hyun, orders Young-soo to attack the arachne. Young-soo then launches an attack against the monsters. The attack hits the creature squarely and knocks it to the ground. Shim Young-soo, Team Love's main damage dealer, prepares after his attack. The confrontation between Shim Young-soo and Seomin Yeop becomes the central point of the match. Shim Young-soo questions the fame of the 7 heroes as a creature is defeated behind him. He then launches a series of attacks and shouts for them to die. He declares that Seomin Yeop will die by his hands. Seomin Yeop calls for Baek Jeho, saying it's time to go. He then charges at high speed across the battlefield. Taking a leap, he launches himself into the air. Then he spins to attack the enemies and advances through a group of monsters. Baek Jeho also attacks with his weapon. When a substance is spat by a creature, he warns Yeop that it's falling, but Seomin Yeop throws his shield downwards and uses it as support to stop the fall, claiming he caught it. Baek Jeho continues fighting, cutting down monsters around him. The commentators are amazed, calling them the legendary duo. The audience celebrates the fact that they instantly obliterated the arachnes, which are difficult to face in groups. Baek Jeho announces the ceiling is clear, complaining about his back. More spiders emerge, and he asks if they should clear those too. The duo then fights in perfect sync against the remaining creatures. Choi Hyuk watches the fight, remembering that arachnes aren't considered strong. Even with tough carapaces that make attacks useless, Seomin Yeop defeats them with ease. He quickly advances toward his next target. Then he grips his spear firmly. Choi Hyuk realizes he's using his special abilities. He decides to use the focused aura skill on his shield, feeling a bit awkward since it's his first time. He then moves forward to test the technique on one of the creatures. As he approaches, he attacks the monster, and to defend himself, he blocks the counterattack using focused aura. Seomin Yeop observes Choi Hyuk's progress from a distance. With a smile, he states he can't just keep watching. A larger creature then emerges and charges to attack. Seomin Yeop braces himself and blocks the creature's attack with his shield. He then lunges forward and pierces the monster with his spear. The creature recoils from the impact of the blow. With a powerful move, he crushes part of the monster's body. The Moro brothers in the audience recognize the technique with enthusiasm. They point out that this is the 100 cm throw, Seomin Yeop's signature move, and Zulan confirms it. Zulan explains that at first glance, the move looks like a common spear thrust, but he actually uses his ability to throw the spear at maximum speed and catches it again before it travels 100 cm. The result is a super powerful thrust that generates much stronger momentum than physical strength alone. The technique of throwing and catching the spear allows no single error, but he executes it as naturally as breathing. Zulan concludes that both 17 years ago and now, Seomin Yeop is simply annoying. As another monster attacks, he asks Baek Jeho if his side is already clear. The creature tries to attack Choi Hyuk from behind, but he prepares for the blow. Seomin Yeop intervenes to block the attack, stating he needs to finish this quickly. He then leaps over the creature to deliver a final blow. Seomin Yeop affirms he has an appointment and cannot be late. With Zone 5-1 clear, the captain congratulates the team on a good job. He then prepares to announce the next move, but notices Seomin Yeop has disappeared. Choi Hyuk explains that he left to clear Zone 5-3 and told them to follow. The captain accepts the decision, trusting that, even if impulsive, Seomin Yeop thinks before acting. He then commands the team to advance to Zone 5-2. The scene shifts to Zone 5-3, where the environment trembles. There, Seomin Yeop greets the zone boss, Serpin. He comments that their last fight feels like it was just yesterday. Preparing for battle, he fully concentrates on his opponent. He then challenges the creature to combat. The monster charges in a swift, direct attack. Seomin Yeop slides across the floor to position himself. He braces his feet and shield on the ground, enduring the impact. He holds firm and faces the creature. With a powerful upward strike, Seomin Yeop hits Serpin's jaw. He maintains the attack's pressure with a determined expression. Seomin Yeop turns and asks the team if they've arrived. He remarks that he thought they'd take forever to clear the area. The team watches him standing over Serpin's body, realizing he truly defeated him alone. He explains that the match system is about earning points to grow stronger, and they need those points. He then leaves the rest to the team and prepares to depart. He calls Baek Jeho and Baek Hayan to follow him. Seomin Yeop reveals he has a great plan. The 3 players leave the main group and head towards Team Amor's hunting zone, avoiding monsters along the way. Seomin Yeop remarks that Serpin almost died from a single blow. He goes on to explain the battlefield's hunting point system, noting they hadn't accumulated many points by killing only a few arachnes. Baek Jeho questions if his power is being influenced by his 110-point mindset. He urges Seomin Yeop, asking why he isn't giving orders if he has a plan, as they'll encounter Team Amor soon. Seomin Yeop reveals his plan involves an opposing team player named Young-soo, who has good skills but a poor mindset. He clarifies that if Young-soo isn't there, he'll observe the situation and then give orders, but if he is, the plan changes. Meanwhile, in Zone 12, Team Amor announces the end of their hunt. Team Amor's captain, Chae Woo-hyun, announces a formation change, splitting his teams for zones 9 and 11. He then orders everyone to advance to their new positions. In zone 9, Team Amor's 5-man squad begins facing more monsters. Shim Young-soo attacks one of the creatures with a powerful blow. He observes that his strategy of accumulating points all at once worked. Confident, he tells Seomin Yeop to wait for him and commands his team to the next zone. While he believes he can defeat Seomin Yeop with a single strike, a teammate warns him of imminent danger, but a shield hits him squarely, knocking him back with the impact. He touches his face, realizing the spear that grazed him is part of an ambush. He realizes it's an enemy team's trap. In zone 11, the other part of the team wonders about the ambush as Seomin Yeop appears. Before they could react, a surprise attack strikes Team Amor's members. Seomin Yeop's team then emerges from behind the fallen players. The attack surprises everyone on the battlefield. In a flashback, Seomin Yeop instructs the rest of his team to take the opposite route and approach the enemy team after defeating Serpin. Seomin Yeop instructs them to fight to the end against the national team players, promising to help them as soon as possible. The team then advances with determination across the battlefield. Baek Jeho notes, the throw was blocked. Seomin Yeop replies, he shouldn't go so hard on the kids right from the start. He then wishes Baek Jeho good luck, who asks to be thrown at once. Seomin Yeop prepares to launch his teammate towards the opposing team. With a swift and powerful move, he hurls Baek Jeho through the air. Next, he positions himself to throw his shield once more. He throws it with great force right behind his teammate. The shield travels at high speed, following the same trajectory. In the air, Baek Jeho intercepts the shield to use it in his attack. Team Amor's captain realizes Young-soo is the target and orders everyone to protect him. Shim Young-soo is quickly surrounded by his teammates. Baek Jeho then teleports and attacks Team Amor's tanks, who are his true targets. One of the opposing players shouts for everyone to focus and get the coach first, but Baek Jeho is hit by an unexpected attack. The Team Amor player orders them not to stop attacking, needing to end the fight before the teleport cooldown. Baek Hayan yells for her father and pulls him out of danger with her whip. She then launches herself into battle, announcing her arrival. Advancing through the air, she prepares for the attack. In an agile move, she uses the whip to propel herself. Seomin Yeop then appears and blocks the attack meant for Baek Jeho. He asks his teammate if it was exciting, and Baek Jeho merely responds with disdain. Seomin Yeop announces they've now taken down all the tanks. The trio gathers, and he asks if it's now a 3-on-3 fight. The remaining Team Amor players react to the new situation. Seomin Yeop then proposes that each chooses an opponent to fight. Shim Young-soo confronts the challenge that was thrown. The audience cheers for the clever and coordinated play they executed. The commentators praise the strategy of feigning an attack on Young-soo to eliminate 2 players and make a clean escape. They also highlight Seomin Yeop's historical first move, controlling the spear to stop the attack on Baek Jeho. A narrator describes him as a true tactician for using a common ability to its fullest potential. Then, while the commentators speak, Seomin Yeop hurls Baek Jeho once more. Baek Hayan rapidly advances in pursuit of Shim Young-soo, while the last Team Amor player follows them. Nathan Bernard from the opposing team attacks, and Baek Hayan leaps to dodge. Seomin Yeop then appears behind Shim Young-soo and questions him. He then hits him in the face with the shield. Next, he throws the shield, hitting him in the head and knocking him to the ground. Seomin Yeop approaches the fallen opponent. The opposing team realizes all 5 of their teammates have been eliminated. Team Amor's captain cannot believe they've already defeated all 5. He becomes frustrated by the unexpected situation. He then orders everyone to attack to turn the game in their favor. Choi Hyuk prepares to face one of the remaining players. In a flashback, Seomin Yeop teaches Choi Hyuk the basics of shield usage. Back in the present, Choi Hyuk applies the teaching and blocks the opponent's attack. The Team Amor player sees an opening after the weapon's impact. Choi Hyuk dodges his opponent's rapid attacks. Team Amor's captain wonders how an improvised tank could have such solid defense. He then fires an attack against what he calls a fake tank. The captain advances for a final blow, and Choi Hyuk rushes to block. Seomin Yeop intervenes and defeats Team Amor's captain with a quick attack. Seomin Yeop praises Choi Hyuk's good work and tells him to leave the rest to them. He then declares they'll finish in 5 minutes to move on to the next match. Team Hope wins the first set 8-0, and player Baek Jeho is announced as MVP. A player rushes into Team Hope's waiting room and congratulates the coach on an incredible play. Surrounded by players, Baek Jeho hears he should become a professional player and thanks them for the praise. He admits he's embarrassed to participate at his age, but says it was fun to wield his weapon again after 17 years. Baek Jeho then turns to Seomin Yeop, who is sitting alone across the room. He states that none of it would have been possible without Yeop by his side. Seomin Yeop watches a K-drama on his device, where a character says love returns, and he thinks it's ridiculous. Meanwhile, the commentators announce the second set, which will take place on a stage with a complex mix of rooms and stairs. They reveal the map is the Labyrinth of the Condemned. This is the dungeon that claimed the lives of many espers before Seoman attempted it, and both teams march in formation. The narrators express curiosity to see who will be the first to cross the labyrinth, as Che Woo-hyun glares at Yeop. Seoman sighs, saying that ever since he returned from the last dungeon, he keeps getting involved with unpleasant people. He remembers the press trying to pit him against Walker, the fanatics who worshipped him like a god, and fools like Shim Youngsu. He concludes that everyone is either suspicious of his achievements or testing him, eager to see his skills. Seoman then puts on a visor and declares it's better to show them. With a smile, Seoman warns that it will be scarier than they expect. At Team Hope's starting point, Jeho begins giving instructions about the labyrinth's complexity, but is interrupted. Seoman announces he will move alone, leaving them to sort things out among themselves. Big Jeho then asks if he still remembers the layout from when he cleared the labyrinth, and Yeop replies that he created the map for that place. Realizing that a year has truly passed for Yeop, he asks if the structure is different, but the young man denies any changes. Baek Jeho tells him not to overdo it, but Yeop says worry is a waste, and everyone should prepare for a shock. He then declares that this time he's fighting for real. If Team Love started on the other side, he knows where they're going and advances at high speed. Hayan asks her father if it's safe to send Uncle Yeop alone, but he assures her that Yeop's dungeon judgment is better than anyone's. He confidently states that Yeop definitely has a plan, and Hayan says her uncle is truly amazing. Baek Jeho's expression changes as he wonders if his brother-in-law really has a plan. He shouts Yeop's name. Yeop is already running through the corridor, blocking attacks with his shield. Then, he slides across the floor, dodging a skeleton warrior's attack. Two skeleton warriors rise and prepare for battle. Seoman stops in a combat stance and comments on how nostalgic it is. Seoman says it's good to see them again, and leaps into the middle of the advancing skeleton warriors. He dodges a blow, then he spins in the air and attacks with his spear. He lands and defends against two more skeletons' attacks. With the side of his shield, he shoves an enemy aside and continues running. A larger skeleton grabs him from behind and hurls him. Yeop is thrown forcefully through the labyrinth. He flies through an area with no floor or stairs, where gravity is 10 times stronger, but he continues to move through the open space. He crashes against a wall and propels himself forward. He swings on a beam to gain more momentum. Yeop smiles, as that path can be used as a great shortcut. He lands with his shield raised directly in front of Team Love. The opposing team members are surprised he's already there in less than 10 minutes. Seoman informs them he finished analyzing them during the first match. Seoman prepares for battle as the dust settles. Then he tells the mediocre players to consider themselves dead. Team Love's captain, Che Woo-hyun, orders everyone not to panic and to retreat for now. He shouts that there's no way Yeop came alone and that they need to regroup. Yeop pursues them, thinking the decision to retreat wasn't bad, though they were completely wrong about him being accompanied. He decides that, as a compliment, he'll play with them a little longer, as the match would have ended if they had faced him. His eyes activate with a scanning ability. He analyzes the fleeing players, discarding them one by one. Finally, he finds his target and throws his spear, hitting one of the players in the head. The hit player disintegrates, and the system announces Seoman Yeop's first elimination. Yeop reaches out, knowing the player couldn't have dodged the attack. He regrets not being able to retrieve his spear, but realizes the rest of the team has already fled. Looking at the structure above, he decides to go there. Team Love regroups in another part of the map to catch their breath. Che Woo-hyun curses at being caught off guard, but a teammate suggests it would have been better to fight since Yeop was alone. Che Woo-hyun explains they had no way of knowing he was alone, and that they need to be on guard in all directions. The commentators observe that Seoman Yeop has reached higher ground, and wonder what he might be planning. He calculates their movement and the time that has passed since their retreat, concluding that this is a good spot. Seoman Yeop then smiles, assuming they must be around there, and says a 50% chance won't hurt. He holds his spear firmly and prepares to throw it. With a smile, he says the word, love. Then he prepares to launch his weapon, and he throws it with force, shouting that love returns. A projectile streaks through the labyrinth at high speed. The assault tears a path through the area's structure. Team Love members look up as they see something emerging from the ceiling. Seoman Yeop's spear falls right in the middle of their group. Che Woo-hyun Hayan stares at the weapon stuck in the ground and wonders where on earth it came from. The commentators announce that an unbelievable scene has just occurred. The system confirms Yeop's second elimination, and he remarks that he was right about the 50% chance. The narrators declare that it was the most impressive elimination in the entire history of the Korean battlefield. Smoke dissipates around Team Love, who were caught off guard by the attack. Shim Young-soo yells that enough is enough with retreating and that they need to fight, asserting that Yeop is definitely alone. Chae Woo-hyun tries to calm him, but Young-soo insists that while they stand still, the other team is freely hunting. The captain explains that they have fewer players now, and dividing their power would be a mistake, but Young-soo demands to know the plan. Yeop lands on a beam above them, asking if there's a division and calling them a bunch of cowards. Young-soo gets annoyed, saying he can just roast him with his ability, but a teammate advises him to conserve his aura. Irritated by the orders, he asks if they want him to lose, and his hand ignites. Then, he launches an attack toward Yeop. The blast explodes against the wall where Yeop had been. Shim Young-soo brags, saying he knew Yeop was hiding back there. Suddenly, Yeop calls him an idiot, and he turns around in surprise. The team looks up and sees the real Yeop standing on the ledge. He asks if Young-soo really didn't think he might have made noise on purpose to get noticed. Yeop then says his acting is terrible and leaps away, leaving the team behind. Shim Young-soo is shocked his ability was blocked so easily, but his teammate points out that he unleashed the attack with full force. A teammate comments that, in terms of power, Young-soo's ability could compete in the big leagues. He concludes that an attack of that level couldn't have been blocked easily and that they can't simply ignore it. Chae Woo-hyun decides that, as Young-soo said, they should get Yeop first and orders the 3 damage dealers to hunt him down. The plan is for them to follow the west path, pretend to be scouting the area, and then attack Yeop from behind. After acquiring some hunting points, the rest of the team will join them to finally defeat him. A narrator comments that Team Love seems to be pursuing Yeop, but he won't be easy to catch. After all, Yeop knows the layout of the Labyrinth of the Condemned better than anyone. He watches the 3 approaching and questions if they aren't moving too predictably. Yop then leaps toward them, stating he's very disappointed. The commentators narrate that he already knew what was coming, and now advances against Team Love's 3 damage dealers. He strikes the ground with his spear, forcing the 3 opponents to retreat from the impact. Yop comments on their good reaction speed. He defends against one of the adversaries and realizes that all 3 are damage specialists. With a smile, Yop considers them perfect prey. Then he grabs one of the players and throws him against the wall. The system announces Yop's 3rd elimination. He then turns to the next opponent. With a 100-centimeter throw, he hurls the defeated player's body. It hits the second opponent, and the system announces his 4th elimination. Yop approaches the last hunter and says it's his turn now. The player freezes in fear. Then he turns and desperately runs away. Yop throws his spear, and the system confirms the 5th elimination. He wonders how many eliminations he has achieved and concludes that only 6 opponents remain. With a smile, he decides he will take care of the rest all at once. The audience comments that it's insane he eliminated 3 national players in less than a minute. VIP guests are also shocked by how quickly everything ended. The Moro brothers comment that many wonder what the outcome would be if past heroes fought current players, and they state that after the match against Walker, they can once again confirm the answer. Seulan concludes that he is truly back, while a narrator states that Yop is dominating. Over the comms, Jeho asks Yop about the 5 eliminations, and Yop simply replies that his aura is now red. Jeho then says they will join him and asks for his location, receiving Zone 3-1 as the reply. Yop spots the remaining opponents and warns that everything will be over before they arrive. He then stands up and asks not to be interrupted anymore, as he's going to fight. Big Jeho tries to call him again, but Yop has already departed at high speed. Yop comes face to face with the rest of Team Love. With a smile, he asks if they've waited long and says he came as fast as he could. Chae Woo-hyun orders his team not to panic and to spread out for now. The team disperses, and Yop assumes they must have prepared something for him. He watches them move quickly to surround him. The remaining members of Team Love stare him down, preparing for the final confrontation. He realizes their plan is to attack after encircling him. Even if they attack from all sides, he predicts the first to advance will be the one with the highest mobility. A player advances, and Yop's analysis reveals he possesses the instant acceleration ability. The opponent uses his instant acceleration, which continuously increases his movement speed for 30 seconds. Yop blocks the attack, noting it's a good ability that momentarily boosts agility and speed. For 30 seconds, he can move faster than any other Esper, but they never thought about why they keep failing in the International League. The opponent is surprised he dodged, but no matter how fast he becomes physically, it doesn't affect his mental calculation rate. With a single blow, Seomin Yap defeats him, and the system announces his 6th elimination. Chae Woo-hyun shouts for Shim Young-soo to use his explosion sphere. Young-soo then launches a series of attacks and yells for Seomin Yap to go to hell. With Yap's vision obscured, one of the players advances. He shouts for Ji-hyun to go in and attack. The player runs toward the smoke. Suddenly, Seomin Yap attacks him from above. The system announces the 7th elimination, and the 2 remaining players are stunned by what happened. Seomin Yap then grabs the 2 spears he had recovered. With a swift motion, he attacks the last 2 opponents, and the system announces the 8th and 9th eliminations. He then turns and walks away from the defeated players' bodies. Seomin Yap lowers his spear and prepares for the final confrontation. He faces the 2 opponents and asks if it's just them against him now. Chae Woo-hyun and Shim Young-soo tremble, and the captain comments that this is even worse than their match against France. Chae Woo-hyun's analysis shows that his special ability is deceleration. Seomin Yap says his ability isn't bad, but his Esper ability is mediocre compared to foreign players. He then turns to Young-soo and says he'll handle things here somehow. Yap asks what they're talking about and advances, attacking Chae Woo-hyun. The system announces Seomin Yap's 10th elimination. He then asks Young-soo if he's the last one left. Young-soo backs away, telling him not to come closer, but Yap continues to advance. With a shout, he charges his last opponent, shield raised. He hits him squarely with the force of the impact. Then, he throws him to the ground, and the system confirms the 11th elimination. The commentators announce that, for the first time in Korean battlefield history, a single player achieved an all-kill. The narrators announce that an unbelievable scene unfolded again in the second set, the first all-kill in Korean battlefield history. The live audience goes wild, and many comment that he decimated the entire national team. Seomin Yap shattered the expectations of experts who said he would take time to get used to the field. He and Jeho walk through the arena while the crowd chants his name. Seomin Yap points to a drone and asks Jeho what it is, and he replies that it's a camera. He explains that the footage is broadcast immediately to the arena, and the crowd cheers when they see him on the big screen. Realizing the footage is immediate, he flips off the camera. Jeho grabs him, asking what's wrong with him, but Yap just says it's fun. He then drags him away, saying they need to go. Yap asks where, and his brother-in-law replies that he needs to do the MVP interview. A reporter named Lee Young-hee introduces herself for the interview with the 2 players. She praises both their skills and says her first question is for Jeho, the MVP of the first set. The reporter asks if he expected to perform so well today, but he replies no. He explains that he was forced to participate due to Seomin Yap's stubbornness, but fortunately, his body remembered how to fight. She thanks him for his answer and prepares to ask Seomin Yap a question. The reporter asks if he expected to achieve an all-kill, and Seomin Yap responds yes, because after trying, he realized it was a piece of cake. He explains that he went easy in the first set to get used to it, and was more aggressive in the second. So the reporter asks for advice for Team Love. He reflects on the opposing team, noting that aptitudes and positions didn't match and that many didn't know how to use their abilities. Yap states that the incompetent coach isn't to blame, but rather that the leader lacked a more attentive eye. Asked if he would like to lead the players, he replies that their level is so low that he doesn't feel like it. But he adds that, depending on the situation, that might change. After all, they live in a capitalist world. Already in the car, Seomin Yap asks where they're going, and Jeho explains it's for the post-game party, as Hayan went ahead. Yap complains he has a show to watch, but his brother-in-law tells him to just forget about it for today. He grumbles that everything is annoying, so Jeho tells him to stop complaining, and asks why he said that in the interview. Jeho comments that he didn't say no for the first time, and Yap clarifies that he has no interest in being a player but could consider teaching. Then, he questions why Jeho became a coach since it's not his strong suit, and Jeho replies that he was pressured into accepting. He explains that after being commanded by Yap for 11 years, he thought he could be a coach, remembering how Yap used to teach. Jeho thought it would be fine because he watched him teach, just like Enro, who became a renowned coach inspired by him. Seomin Yap says that while fighting, he realized no one in the country knows how to teach techniques correctly, and his brother-in-law asks if he wants to be a technical coach. He replies that he could, if they paid him well, and that he's only helping because Jeho is the coach, who thanks him. Seomin Yap says he'll give some free advice, and tells Jeho to try doing as he says, and his brother-in-law agrees to listen. He advises placing Choi Hyuk as a tanker, using Yu Buko for the finishing blow since he can't handle his own speed, and moving Chae Woo-hyun to the rear. And finally, he tells them to get rid of the vice president's son, leaving Jeho shocked at the suggestion to remove Young-soo. Seomin Yap asks why he cares about the vice president, reminding him that he is still one of the 7 heroes. Jeho argues that the numbers don't give a good reason to remove him, as his firepower is impressive and he has the team's greatest aura. But Yap questions why keep him around when he has the focus of a child, and reminds him that Team Love lost the game because of him. Jeho insists it would be a waste of his ability, but his brother-in-law states that he can't be used until he works on his focus. Then he asks if he should remove Youngsu and put in Choi Hyuk, and Yeop confirms that if he works on Hyuk's strength, he'll see an immediate change. Somun Yeop concludes his free advice and tells him to inform the association president that he'll need to prepare a high salary if he wants to hire him. Their car then arrives at Hunter's hotel. As they enter the party, they are greeted by other guests. Hayan runs excitedly and waves to her uncle, saying he finally arrived. She recommends the vodka, and Seomun Yeop comments that she seems to know her drinks well. Hayan explains that she started drinking because she heard it was his favorite drink, so he congratulates her on growing up well, while Jeho decides to go see the president. A young man comments that since the nuisance is gone, they can drink freely. Seomun Yeop's arrival catches the attention of the party guests, who comment on his presence. The American field agent, Joe Fellman, prepares to approach him, but his assistant stops him. She advises him not to approach with the intention of hiring him so as not to offend him, and he agrees. Fellman decides to wait for the right moment, but someone bumps into him asking to be excused. The man addresses Seomun Yeop, who turns to face him. Yeop recognizes him as Jake Rand, the European field agent. Rand greets him, and Yeop corrects him about his surname while Fellman observes the interaction from a distance. Fellman remembers he doesn't need to be defensive just because Rand poached a player from him before. He understands that Seomun Yeop is no ordinary player, and that it won't be easy to convince him without understanding what he's been through. Jake Rand hands Yeop his card, telling him to contact him if he ever feels like playing, and Yeop replies that he'll think about it. Hayan asks her uncle how his English is so good, and he explains he learned it by traveling through different countries. She asks why she only heard Korean during his encounter with Walker. Yeop jokes that she must have a peanut brain, and Hayan complains that it's mean. Seeing Jake Rand leave, Joe Fellman realizes this is his chance to approach, but as he tries to advance, he's pushed by a crowd asking to be excused. The Moro brothers approach Seomun Yeop, greeting him in English. They praise him as the best esper in the world, and he replies that he also knows French. Yeop recognizes them as the French arms-dealing brothers, much to their surprise. Hayan whispers that they own Paris Lumiere, the best battlefield team in the world. She mentions that Nathan Bernard, one of the top 3 players, is in their club, and Yeop remembers the guy who was as fast as Jeho in his prime. He then assumes they came to recruit him, but the brothers deny the intention. They explain that they know he would never do something he didn't want to, but it would be an honor to have him on the team. The two reveal that, in fact, they are interested in the beautiful young woman, who is surprised by the attention. Seomun Yeop tells his niece that he thinks they want to recruit her, leaving her shocked. Hayan thanks them for the honor, and Yeop advises her not to get too excited. He asks if their interest in her is genuine, and the brothers assure him they wouldn't lie in front of a player. They explain they hadn't considered her before due to her indecisiveness, but her change to a close-range damage dealer was like finding the missing piece. Yeop agrees the analysis is accurate upon hearing that she would fit into their team if she improved her sword skills. The Moro brothers suggest that he, Nathan, and Hayan would form a perfect triangular formation. Seomun Yeop says he will consider it if he ever feels like becoming a player, and they promise to prepare the biggest contract for that day. Seomun Yeop asks if battlefield owners make a lot of money, and the brothers confirm that they do, as long as they create players that other teams want. As longtime fans, they offer him a personalized weapon as a gift, and Yeop accepts, as he doesn't refuse freebies. The Moro brothers bow and say he can eagerly await the gift, then bid farewell. They leave quickly, and Yeop comments that those two are like a tornado. Hayan approaches and asks what they said, but her uncle complains that he's getting tired and wants people to stop talking to him. He says they can talk about it over a glass of vodka, but she insists on knowing what they said. Someone calls his name and he turns with an annoyed expression. Yeop asks what it is now, and an older man asks for a moment of his time. The man introduces himself as Yang Min-young from the Blue House Secretariat section, and Yeop questions what the Blue House wants with him. Yang Min-young asks if he knows about the Esper merit system, and Yeop remembers a false law about a pension for espers who contributed to the war. Min-young explains that it's not a false law, and that he is a level 1 contributor, like Jeho, entitled to a pension of 12 million won per month. Seomun Yeop simply asks, so what? Then the man says they intend to present him with the pension he hasn't received for the past 17 years. He informs him that the amount is exactly 2.5,860,000,000 won, and it's tax-free. 5,006,800,000,000 won echoes through the hall. Seomun Yeop then repeats the value of 2.5 billion to himself. As he calculates the total with other rewards, a young woman approaches and asks what Uncle Yeop Yeop is doing. He turns to answer. A man approaches and introduces himself as Joe Fellman, an American agent. Seomin Yeop asks if he's also trying to recruit him and asks him to leave him alone as he's tired. But Fellman insists he needs to tell him something. He explains that Yeop is probably still getting used to this world since he saved everyone, but he can't get his 17 years back. The young man merely questions the word troubles. Joe Fellman continues, saying that in time he'll find a new life purpose and get used to peace. Then he asks Yeop not to feel discouraged and hands him a card, hoping he'll remember it. After saying goodbye and leaving, the agent wonders if he talked a lot of nonsense. The girl asks if Uncle Yeop was also recruited by Fellman, and he replies that he found him strange, making her curious about what he does. The young woman explains that he's a big fish in the American Major League, nicknamed Money Ghost for getting rich by taking many Korean espers. Seomin Yeop finds it strange that he didn't mention money and just spoke nonsense. She adds that she heard he tried to recruit her father a long time ago with an absurd amount, while Yeop watches Fellman walk away. A presenter then announces that the party's main event, the donation exchange, is about to begin. He informs that the announcements will be made by a special guest, the person who donated the most. The presenter then reveals Seomin Yeop's name, who wonders if it's actually him. He is invited onto the stage as the crowd applauds. On stage, Seomin Yeop asks how much his entire fortune was, since they said he donated more than everyone else there. The presenter replies that the donation was 74 trillion won. Park Jin-tae clarifies that according to his wishes, Park himself and Coach Baek took responsibility for donating everything. Seomin Yeop takes the microphone and says the committee president warned him, but he didn't imagine it was that much. He finds it hilarious that he was happy to receive 2.5 billion when his assets exceeded $1 trillion. The audience laughs when he comments that maybe he should have recovered some of his assets. He then pauses and continues, saying that 17 years have passed since his assets were donated and a lot has changed since he returned from the last dungeon. He states that everyone praises him for saving the world and talks about his noble sacrifice. But the truth is there was no noble meaning. He simply enjoyed dungeons. Sometimes he even wished the enemies wouldn't lose so he could keep fighting. That's why Seomin Yeop doesn't understand the praise he receives for saving the world. He doesn't feel accomplished, just that something fun has ended. However, there's one thing he is proud of, the fact that the children helped by his donations are now adults. This is more gratifying than saving the world, as he doesn't want any other child to be as unhappy as he was. After the speech, the presenter thanks him, and Seomin Yeop leaves the stage to applause. Park Jin-tae approaches and comments that he really knows how to give a speech. He questions if 7 trillion can cover up his problematic tendencies, and Yeop blames his unhappy childhood for his behavior. Park Jin-tae says he was born a troublemaker, so the young man simply asks why he's really there. The man questions him for annihilating the national players, and Seomin Yeop retorts by asking if he needed to train them that way. Park laments that the charity match made things worse, with the KB League being defeated by a single man, but Yeop thinks it's always been like that. He gets annoyed, saying that thanks to Yeop, the government barely funded espers, treating them like monsters. Then Jin-tae shouts that Yeop contributed to this, recalling the times he treated the National Assembly and the Blue House as if they were thugs. Park Jin-tae yells that because of him, politicians thought all espers were the same, but Seomin Yeop retorts that they started bad-mouthing first. After ending the discussion, he finally reveals what he wanted and invites Yeop to be the technical coach for the national team. He offers a lot of money, but Seomin Yeop responds that it will be difficult. With a smile, the young man says there's something he wants to try. Already in the car, Seomin Yeop calculates the total will be around 16 billion, and Jeho asks what he's talking about. He then declares that he wants to own a club, surprising his companion with the sudden revelation. Seomin Yeop explains that his heart aches, seeing the national team play so poorly, and believes he can improve them by coaching players he chooses himself. Jeho questions his patriotism, and informs him that even the lowest-ranked league team costs 20 billion, which makes Yeop consider buying a second division team. Jeho realizes this has nothing to do with patriotism, but rather with making money, and Seomin Yeop just laughs. He then confirms that it's obvious. When the car stops, Jeho announces they've arrived and tells him to get out. Seomin Yeop pauses as he exits the car, and his companion asks what's wrong. He then spots a woman standing further down the street. The woman stares back at him. Jeho recognizes her as Xiulan and asks what brings her there, and she replies that she has business to attend to. Seomin Yeop simply asks what it is. He realizes he can't decipher her expression, unlike in the past. He decides to check her status to better understand the situation. He notes that most of her abilities are maxed out, and that she has a new one called Location, realizing how much stronger she has become. Yeop turns to her and asks what brings her there, questioning if she came to kill him. She admits she thought about killing him when she learned he became immortal, but she states that's not why she's there, and he doubts she would let her. He advises her to forget old grudges since she's alive. But Julan replies that her grudges are already gone, and that she has forgiven him for how he treated her. He then asks why she came there. She reveals she just wanted to see with her own eyes that he was truly back. After confirming, Julan turns to leave, leaving Yeop and Jeho confused by the sudden visit. As she walks away, the true reason for her coming comes to light. In a flashback, Yeop reprimands her, asking if he should kill her right there. Young Shulin just wanted to go home, feeling she had reached her limit. Suddenly, something happens and makes her look up. A large stone monster rises in front of her. Siulan realizes she needs to hurry and use her extinction ray, but she is too exhausted to use the ability. Then, the creature is suddenly destroyed by an attack. Yeop appears beside her and asks if she can no longer defeat something like that. He then asks if she's okay. The young woman remains silent for an instant. Back in the present, Shulan confirms to herself that he truly returned. Yeop celebrates seeing the deposit in his account and wonders which club he should choose. Jeho asks him if he knows how to use the banking app and if he's really going to buy a battleground club, and Yeop confirms it. As he browses his phone, Yeop says he's thinking of investing as a hobby, and Jeho warns him about the high cost. Jeho then offers to buy him a KB1 League club, stating it's the least he can do. But the young man refuses, saying he doesn't want his money and asks what KB7 is. His companion explains that the KB7 League has matches between 7-player teams and is cheaper to maintain. Yeop asks if that league also has many players, and Jeho clarifies that the more skilled ones prefer KB2. He then decides he wants to buy a KB2 team and that he should do it soon. Yeop reveals he hasn't researched any teams yet and will ask the association president. He then calls the president and shouts into the phone that the idea is great. The president supports him, saying he'll gladly welcome him if that's why he turned down the coaching position, but Yeop asks him to speak softer. He asks if there are any clubs for sale, and Park Jin-tae replies that there are 3 open to offers and 1 that urgently needs to sell. The young man shows interest in the proposal. Then he asks which club it would be. Upon arriving in front of the Incheon Battleground Stadium, he questions if that's the place. Yeop observes the stadium's big screen, which announces the match between GT and Hanjong. He then wonders if the team is from Hanjong Industry. The battle arena is revealed to the crowd. The audience cheers in support, with some provoking the Hanjong team. Already seated in the stands, Yeop believes no one will recognize him in his disguise, but the people around whisper about his appearance and decide to move away as a precaution. He just laments, hoping to find at least one useful player, since the secondary league must be worse than the national team. An announcer proclaims the entry of both teams into the stadium, the GT Knights and Hanjong Industry. Yeop begins his analysis and considers the first player terrible. He continues evaluating the other players, classifying them as terrible, or at most, mediocre. His analysis stops at one of the players. He then observes the statuses of Namgung Ji-hoon and No Jung-won, and questions why the thin player, Namgung Ji-hoon, is a support. His protective ability, which creates a protective layer, seems suitable for the role, but his technical score of 74 out of 95 indicates he has the potential to become a good damage dealer. He observes that the player is peculiar and would never have known his true calling if no one had noticed, so he decides he's in. Then, he analyzes the strength and endurance limits of another player, which are similar to those of the national player Chae Woo-hyun. His physical strength ability is common, but the strengthening percentage is high, so he is also approved. Yeop concludes that the rest of the team is bad and turns to observe the players on the bench. One of the players on the bench catches his attention. He then analyzes the statuses of Lee Nayeon, who is cheering for her team. Her special ability allows her to jump a maximum of 20 meters, but he considers that she could be decent with a bow if her speed were increased to 100. An hour later, the match comes to an end. Outside, he faces the final score and realizes they are ridiculously weak. He believes, however, that the worse they start, the more fun it will be to see them improve. Already on the phone, Yeop confirms he has made his decision and announces he will buy Hanjong Industry. 2 days later, at the association headquarters, the former owner hands over the team, regretting that the players went through difficulties because of him. Yeop shakes his hand and promises that he will build the ultimate team, receiving receiving a vote of confidence. The former owner then concludes, saying he will sincerely root for him. A news report states that Yeop bought Hanjong Industry for 519 billion won, generating various online comments. In front of the association, Park Jin-tae congratulates him on being the new owner, but Yeop downplays the purchase, and the older man retorts that a club is not a toy. He then asks how Yeop intends to manage the team. The young man replies that, for now, he will let them do what they were already doing, and that he will check on the players soon. Park Jin-tae says goodbye, and, as he leaves, asks if the vehicle he sees is a new acquisition. Yeop explains that he will need to get around and can't just ask Jeho to drive him everywhere. He reveals that he bought the motorcycle with the change left over from the club purchase. Then, he speeds off. On Gyeongbu Highway, he weaves between cars that honk at him. A driver complains about a lunatic riding a motorcycle on the highway and points out that he's not even wearing a helmet. Yeop continues speeding down the road. Another driver watches him pass, and then recognizes him as Yeop. Other people in the cars comment that he can do this because he's immune, and that it's good he's not wearing a helmet so the police can recognize him. Suddenly, he brakes sharply in the middle of the lane. Yeop arrives and observes the headquarters of the Hanjong Industry Club. He then looks at the roof of the old building and comments that the place is a dump, but at least it's spacious. A man approaches him to say that visitors are not allowed, but gets scared when he recognizes him. He introduces himself as Coach Choi Dong-jun, and Yeop analyzes his physical constitution. Scanning his statuses, he confirms that the coach is an esper and was a support in his prime. The young man then asks the man's age, who replies he is 43. Yeop puts his arm around his shoulders, saying he is 4 years older. He leans in and insists on the age question, and the coach nervously agrees. Then Yeop says he will call him Dong-jun, and that he can call him boss, but the man prefers to address him as sir. He asks Dong-jun to show him the building. The coach guides him through the facilities and informs him that the club has 14 players. Yeop considers the number ridiculous, but is relieved that they have the necessary facilities, even if old. Finally, Choi Dong-jun opens the doors to the training arena. The new owner finds the place large but worn and asks why there are only 11 training modules for 14 players. The coach explains that the modules are very expensive, so they barely manage to buy 11 for the main players. Yeop observes the arena, noting that although the coach isn't the worst, the biggest problem is the players. He then decides that he will start meeting with the players, surprising the coach with his haste, and asks him to bring the listed players, as he wants to see them right away. In the lounge, Yeop introduces himself to the players as the new owner of the club. A young woman named Lee Nayeon introduces herself, saying it's an honor to meet him. He extends his hand and comments that she must have been practicing with the bow lately. Surprised, the girl asks how he knew, and he explains that he can tell by the calluses on her hands. Yeop states that she must have many worries, as her skills don't improve no matter how hard she tries. She just agrees, knowing she lacks technique, and that, in another situation, she would remain on the bench forever. But he says it's fine and that he will make her a main player, which surprises her. Then, Yeop announces that their theme will be Mysterious Thief, and declares that from now on, she will be the thief who steals the opponent's focus. Yeop asks if, no matter how much she trains, she struggles to improve her skills. Lee Nayeon agrees, saying she no longer has hope. With a smile, he points at her and says she's out. She then starts to worry if she'll really be expelled for agreeing with him, but he reassures her, saying he won't expel her. He reaffirms that he will turn her into a main player, and she asks if he truly meant it. Yeop confirms and says that, in his opinion, she has a specific skill, and the girl questions if it's her archery skills. He then asks if she's crazy, and how an esper could be bad with a bow and arrow, and he reveals that her talent is nothing of the sort, but rather running. She merely repeats the word running, and he instructs her to focus on perfecting her running to use it with her jumping ability. He explains that if she shoots arrows while doing this, she can steal the opposing team's kills and escape when they advance. The young woman asks if he wants her to harass the opposing team, and he confirms, saying she should just harass them. The team's new owner explains that they won't be able to ignore her, but she'll be too fast to catch. He concludes that her job is to annoy the opponent, which is part of the fun of games. She then asks if she can really become a main player, and he guarantees that if she performs well, she could even join the national team. Lee Nayeon asks, excited, if what he said is true. She leans on the table and insists on knowing if he really meant it, and Yeop simply confirms. The young woman repeats to herself the words, main player and national team. Then she thanks him and promises to do her best, and he asks her to leave and call Namgung Jihoon to come in. The door opens and a voice announces that it's entering. Seomin Yap simply authorizes entry. Namgung Jihoon introduces himself as the team's support, saying it's an honor to meet him. He then asks why the new owner wanted to see him, as he heard he was interviewing the players. Seomin Yap informs him that he is no longer a support. The player is shocked and retorts that he is indeed a support. But Seomin Yap denies it, and Jihoon insists there must be a mistake. But the new owner reaffirms that from that moment on, he is no longer a support. Jihoon wonders why he was called just to hear that, while his attributes are shown. Seomin Yap explains that, in his opinion, he is better suited to be a close-range damage dealer, leaving the player stunned. He continues, stating that the player has talent for sword handling, and Jihoon asks if he watched his matches. After saying he slept during the games, Seomin Yap corrects himself, but Jihoon argues that his reaction speed and agility are too low. Seomin Yap explains that this happens because he always stays behind using only his skill, but Jihoon defends that being a support is not a pathetic position. He then gets irritated and asks if the player thinks he knows more than him, and the young man replies no. The new owner reveals that he hates supports, as 9 out of 10 stay in the backline without fighting, which is like having one less member on the team. But he raises a finger and states that 1 in 10 is allowed to play as support. These players, he explains, have at least 2 supplementary skills and can fulfill their role even from afar. He then confronts him, asking if he only has the protection skill, and the player confirms. With a smile, Seomin Yap says he will give him another weapon. Jihoon misunderstands, asking if he will turn him into a sword-wielding support, annoying the team owner. He grabs him and shouts that he will make him a close-range damage dealer with a support skill, and the player apologizes. Seomin Yap questions him why he insists so much on being a support, and if he is afraid to fight on the front lines. He then comforts him, saying that with this attitude he will never be a main player, and that he must do what he says if he wants to succeed. The player asks if he will really succeed if he does this, and Yap confirms yes, depending on his effort. When Jihoon asks what will happen if he wants to continue as a support, the team owner replies that he will be cut. He then gives him the choice to live as a reserve on the worst team in the league, or try to change his life, extending a hand to the player. Namgung Jihoon accepts the proposal and declares that he will become a close-range damage dealer, shaking Seomin Yap's hand. At the end of the meeting, the coach approaches and asks if he has finished the interviews. Seomin Yap then asks him to find a new coach who knows how to use a sword well. Choi Dongjun argues that the player is a support, but the new owner corrects him, stating that he is now a close-range damage dealer. He also instructs him to prepare to teach Lee Naeon how to run, and Dongjun questions if this will be effective. Before leaving, Yap orders that the first team's stamina be increased, as they had none compared to the GT Knights. The coach bids him farewell, wishing him a good trip home as he prepares to depart. Outside, Seomin Yap pauses for a moment. He then looks at the building's sign and wonders what name he should change the teams to. The next day, the scene takes place in another location. Seomin Yap rests his head in his hand. Baek Jeho approaches, commenting that it's strange to see him so pensive, and the young man asks not to be disturbed. Jeho points to the turned-off TV and asks if his concern is because of Hanjong Industry. He then questions if he isn't going to recruit more players, as the team only has 14. Seomin Yap suddenly stands up, startling his companion, who insists he should recruit more people. Baek Jeho asks where he is going, and Seomin Yap merely repeats the word recruit. He approaches the window and states that he should recruit. Looking outside, he says that he happens to have a bunch of loudspeakers right there. A crowd of men is gathered outside, whispering among themselves. Seomin Yap opens the sliding door and calls for Dongjun. Already on the phone, he warns that they will recruit some players. He asks if there's any reason not to, and the coach explains that they barely have funds to maintain the place. Seomin Yap calls him stingy and promises to buy modules if they choose new players, surprising Dongjun. He questions the reason for such a fuss, and the coach reveals that a module costs about 200 million won. The new owner gets annoyed with the cheap team, saying that's not much, and Choi Dongjun apologizes. He leans on the railing and orders the recruitment announcement to be published quickly. Then, he jumps from the balcony and says to leave the announcement up for 3 days. After landing, he hears Dongjun question if 3 days isn't too short a time. The coach argues that they would need a month, but Yap insists on 3 days, as he has an idea. A group of men talks outside while drinking coffee. A wooden gate opens. Seomin Yap greets the men outside, calling them reporters. He positions himself in front of the group, who question him about an interview and if he intends to become a player. Then, he says he will answer everything, but they need to do him a favor in return. One of the reporters asks what the favor is, and Yap replies that it's nothing major. He announces that his team is holding an open player selection for 3 days, and asks them to write that the team desires many candidates. Over the phone, Dongjun excitedly reports that applications are pouring in non-stop. Seomun Yeop, riding his motorcycle, asks if they've already received a few thousand applications. The coach denies it, explaining they've just passed 70, and capable espers aren't that common. Yeop simply asks them to print the resumes, as he will choose the players himself. Dongjun then throws a stack of papers on the table, announcing those are all the applications. Seomun Yeop says he will take a quick look to select some candidates for interviews. It's explained that after awakening, espers undergo a physical exam at their respective associations. This test calculates individuals' strength, agility, and aura levels. Seomun Yeop complains about the low numbers on the resumes, comparing them to his own test results. Annoyed, he crumples the papers, unable to identify hidden abilities with just that information. He starts analyzing the resumes again, hoping to find someone useful. Suddenly, one of the resumes catches his eye. He examines the profile of Jo Sung-ho, a 22-year-old delivery man. His physical attributes are only 1.5 times greater than an Olympic gold medalist's, but he possesses the ability to transfer objects and vision to others. With a smile, Seomun Yeop comments that it seems they have an interesting candidate. Then, the interview day arrives at Hanjong Industry headquarters. The first candidate introduces himself enthusiastically, declaring he is a big fan of Mr. Seomun Yeop. During the interview, Yeop notes Kim Jin-ho's resume states he played in high school, and the young man confirms he quit after graduation. He then asks if, by applying, he had changed his mind, but the candidate reveals he just wanted an autograph, and an annoyed Seomun Yeop tells him to leave. Seeing the man's confusion, he repeats for him to get out. The candidate threatens him, asking what will happen if news of how he treats a fan leaks. Then, a cell phone is thrown, hitting his head hard. Seomun Yeop challenges him to tell everyone the team has a crazy owner, as the man falls to the ground. While the candidate pleads, he simply asks for the next person to come in. The other candidates in the waiting room see the scene and wonder what's happening after hearing an explosion. The next to be called is Mr. Jo Seung-ho, who gulps. He enters the room and introduces himself formally. The coach then questions how he managed to pass the selection process with such low stats. The coach asks why that candidate is there, but Seomun Yeop just smiles. Using his scanning eyes, he analyzes Jo Seung-ho's stats. He confirms Jo Seung-ho possesses 3 special abilities: object transfer, vision transfer, and aura transfer. He realizes that aura transfer is a rare and tactically useful ability. Since the ability wasn't on the resume, he concludes the candidate unlocked it without realizing. Seomun Yeop comments to the coach that the candidate is the same age as Lee Nayeon. With a smile, he declares it's destiny. Then, he calls for Jo Seung-ho, who responds promptly. Yeop questions him about his battleground experience, and the young man confirms he only worked as a delivery man. The new team owner asks what made him apply, as his stats don't inspire confidence. Seung-ho admits he knows his abilities are useless, but he reveals he's dreamed of being a player since he was young, and used his low stats as an excuse not to try. While working, he thought he should try to create fun memories. He states he applied with the sincerest intentions. Seomun Yeop asks if he can use his ability to move objects from afar, and Jo Seung-ho replies he tested it up to 2.5 kilometers. The candidate explains that to send objects to someone out of his sight, he first uses his aura to locate the person. Seung-ho laments that the process isn't automatic, but Yeop reassures him, saying enemy locations in dungeons are limited. The new team owner realizes the ability can also be used for reconnaissance, making it more useful than he imagined. He then comments to the coach that every thief needs an assistant, leaving the coach confused. Seomun Yeop confirms the candidate's name and informs him that he's in. Jo Seung-ho thanks him excitedly and asks if he's serious. Seomun Yeop declares he will become a great partner for Lee Nayeon, surprising the coach. He stands up and announces that the two will be the team's main players, and proclaims that, from now on, they will show opponents a match that will drive them crazy. To celebrate the team's new beginning, everyone is invited to eat, drink, and have fun. The players toast and celebrate together. Seomun Yeop watches the team, who seem to be in good spirits, and a player approaches to greet him. The young man introduces himself as the captain of Hanjong Industry, No Jung-wan. Seomun Yeop analyzes No Jung-wan's stats, and remembers seeing him in the previous match. He considers him a tanker with no special traits but qualified for the team, and the captain thanks him for the investment. On behalf of the team, Jung-wan promises they will do their best, but the new owner tells them not to worry, as he doesn't expect immediate results. The captain then bows in thanks, saying he will count on him. Seoman observes the young man, considering him a perfect and diligent captain. He then spots Lee Naeun talking and laughing with the other players. With a gesture, he calls Lee Naeun and Jo Sung-ho closer. The girl confirms they've already met, and excitedly says they are the new duo and are the same age. Yap says they should get to know each other better, as they will be thick as thieves from now on. He explains that every thief has someone who brings them information from the shadows, leaving the two confused. Then, Seoman Yap reveals that Sung-ho will be responsible for working from the shadows. He concludes the matter for now, saying he'll give them the details later and tells them to go drink. Observing the team, he concludes they've finally reached the minimum required for a team. He turns to the group. Looking at the building's name, Seoman Yeop announces they must choose a new team name. Choi Dongjun calls the attention of all the team players. Then, Seoman Yeop stands before everyone and announces he will reveal the team's new name. With a smile, he announces the team's new name. 3 months later, the team prepares for a new match. An announcer declares the star of the match is YSM, formerly Hanjong Industry, predicting a major turning point. The big screen shows YSM's confrontation, and the commentator notes that the main players haven't changed since Seoman Yap took over. In a room, Seoman Yap instructs the team to do what they practiced, giving special attention to Sung-ho. Jo Sung-ho seems unsure and asks if that will really be okay, but he's reassured it's all for performance. Seoman Yeop declares today is the day to reveal the results of the last 3 months of training and orders them to show what they're made of, with the team responding in unison. The match between YSM and Incheon BC begins, with the first set starting now. A woman thanks Seoman Yeop for the invitation, commenting she hadn't been to an arena in a while. She explains she went to cheer for Hayan a few times, but hadn't visited since, and he asks about Jeho's games. The woman says he asked her to wait until the national team improved, and Yeop concludes she's never seen one of his matches. He complains about the national team's poor performance. The woman then asks if his team is different, and he confirms with a smile, saying she can eagerly look forward to watching them. With a confident look, he promises he will show her an insanely fun match. The announcer declares the dungeon for the first set is Wizard's Canyon, a place that is always beautiful. The commentators highlight that the map is suitable for both land and sea combat, which will test the YSM players' adaptability. 3 months ago, the coach timed Lee Naeun and was surprised to see her run 100 meters in 3.01 seconds. The new team owner watches the girl run and states she has incredible talent for running. Seoman Yeop comments that Jo Sung-ho also got much faster, but Naeun is a rough diamond. He reveals he discovered her talent due to her muscle development, among other things. The coach praises his perception, but Yeop cuts him off, asking to focus on the players, as they'll need to run through various dungeons. He assures that Lee Naeun will improve simply by correcting her running form, and that she'll be ready for real matches soon. 40 days after training began, the story moves forward. During training, 50 days before the game, one player complains Lee Naeun stole his monster again. He wonders how he'll catch her at that speed as she moves nimbly. After jumping to a higher position, the young woman confirms to herself that she shook them off. Seoman Yap observes the training and comments that her passive play has improved, then asks Team B how they feel. One player responds that their hunting speed seems to have halved, and that she's starting to confuse him. The team owner praises Lee Naeun's good work and movement. She thanks him and promises to keep giving her best. But despite smiling, the truth is, she's very worried. She wonders if, as a permanent reserve on the worst second league team, she can truly become a main player with just training. Lee Naeun finds it hard to believe that's possible. She wonders if she can really do this, and if she'll perform well. Suddenly, someone calls her, pulling her from her thoughts. She turns and asks if they called her. No Jungwon points out she didn't hear him call, and asks if she's nervous, but the girl denies it. He then says there's no need to pretend, as it's her first game, and it's natural to be nervous. The captain admits he threw up from how anxious he was during his first match. He tells her she can be nervous whenever she wants, but she shouldn't doubt her ability. With a smile, he encourages her, stating that the leader of the 7 heroes believes in her, and that she will be the best thief. Lee Naeun nods in agreement. No Jung-hwan declares that the team plays under the hero Seoman Yeop's name, and they must play a match worthy of his legacy. The team unites, shouting in response to the call to follow the plan. The commentator observes that YSM has split into 3 teams, questioning if this is the 4-4-3 tactic. Then, he notes that 3 players are crossing the dungeon without hunting, suggesting a containment play. The group of 3 players advances at high speed. Upon reaching a cliff, the 3 YSM players stop. Naeun tells them to wait a second as the floating island they are on moves. Jo Sung-ho bends down to pick up a rock, stating that should be enough. He then activates his object transfer ability ability. A portal opens in front of the group. It's explained that Seung-ho will use his ability's operational mechanism as a scout, confirming the target and its location. The scout's vision expands, revealing the opposing team's location. He confirms he's found Park Jong-hyuk, Choi Young-gil, Jung Yoon-dae, and Lim Ji-wook. Seung-ho informs Nayeon that there are 4 players up there, and she confirms. She positions herself at the edge of the cliff. Then, Lee Nayeon leaps towards the floating island. The young woman lands and pushes off backward. She then moves forward, gaining speed. Suddenly, the player stops. A monster attacks the opposing team. She finally spots the group of players fighting the dragons and announces she's found them. Nayeon leaps and lands in the midst of battle. The archer prepares to shoot, certain none of the players there will be able to dodge. The opposing team advances in formation. One player celebrates, saying they've caught almost everyone, and asks them to concentrate until the end. But suddenly, an arrow hits the dragon, surprising everyone. Lee Nayeon celebrates the perfect shot. The opposing team complains their hunting points were stolen, and the group leader asks them to focus. He then orders Ji-wook to deal with Lee Nayeon, and the player advances at high speed. He attacks her, but she jumps back to dodge. The girl watches the attack pass by her. The player's charge opens a crater in the ground. He wonders where she went, and Nayeon replies she's right there. She then fires another arrow and continues to move rapidly across the battlefield. Ji-wook gets annoyed and says if she jumps, he just needs to aim where she'll land. He prepares to attack when she jumps into the air, but the archer changes direction in the air, dodging and provoking him. She challenges him, saying he's too slow to catch her, making him even more annoyed. The commentator observes that Lee Nayeon is irritating the Incheon players, and no one can keep up with her. He also points out she has a limited number of arrows, and the archer realizes her quiver is empty. On the other side of the field, Seung-ho hears Nayeon's call for more arrows. Lee Nayeon's quiver is refilled with arrows via Jo Seung-ho's ability, and the commentator notes this is a great containment tactic. He continues, saying Seung-ho became a key player in 3 months thanks to this ability, as the young man removes a sheet from himself. He then reveals a large book titled Chronicles of Seomun Yup. Lying surrounded by arrows, Jo Seung-ho reads the book and tells Nayeon to inform him when her arrows run out, leaving the commentator confused. Then, the commentator exclaims that Jo Seung-ho is reading comics in the middle of the match. Weeks earlier, during a practice match, one player shouts to hurry and catch her, as she's already stolen 6 of them. Lee Nayeon nimbly jumps between opponents, who complain they can't catch her because she's too fast. Observing the scene, Choi Dong-jun comments that she was born to annoy others and will have no trouble continuing. He then points out the problem is Jo Seung-ho, who takes too long to find a safe spot, making it hard for Nayeon to get more arrows. Choi Dong-jun's solution is to have Namgung Ji-hoon escort him, using his protection ability to keep him safe. Jo Seung-ho finally finds a spot and crouches near several arrow quivers on the ground. He then picks up one of the quivers and takes out an arrow. The 2 men continue observing the match from afar. One of them asks if the young man will keep doing that, and Choi Dong-jun confirms he can't go anywhere alone. Choi Dong-jun's companion questions if it's not a bit sad to leave him there like that. He then decides that won't work, as it's better to look funny than pathetic. In the middle of the match, Jo Seung-ho is seen calmly reading a comic. Suddenly, an arrow whizzes past him as he lies reading. Namgung Ji-hoon lunges in front of an approaching creature. He creates a barrier and blocks the attack, protecting Jo Seung-ho, who lies fallen right behind him. While Namgung Ji-hoon fights, Jo Seung-ho continues reading his comics. In the audience, a man wonders how his team can be losing to those idiots. Suddenly, Lee Nayeon informs Seung-ho she's out of arrows. He then holds one of the arrow quivers and materializes it in his hand. Elsewhere, Seomun Yup starts laughing loudly. A woman beside him asks if he ordered them to do that, and he replies it's hilarious. He boasts about his frightening talent spotting ability, but when she asks him to help her husband, he says he already did. Seomun Yup explains he advised him to use Choi Hyuk as a tanker, but the scoundrel didn't listen. She admits she doesn't know much about her husband's work, but heard there's friction between the two. He then states that a coach needs to know how to use force to solve problems. Back in the match, Jo Seung-ho's distraction is noticed. 2 Incheon players enter the fray, making the situation dangerous for Lee Nayeon. An opponent advances towards her and shouts for her to be caught. Seung-ho instructs her to just dodge the attack and use that route to escape. Lee Nayeon agrees with the instruction. Jo Seung-ho then asks if she can do it. She confirms and leaps away, while 2 opponents run not to lose sight of her. An attack whizzes past Lee Nayeon, who prepares for what comes next. She remembers Seomun Yup's promise that she would become the best. With renewed determination, she prepares to act. Her team plays in the name of the hero Seomun Yup, seeking to honor his legacy. She then reaffirms her determination for the fight. The girl starts to move, nimbly dodging multiple attacks. Lee Nayeon then creates copies of herself to confuse opponents. Her opponents complain she's too fast in order not to lose sight of her. She continues running at high speed across the battlefield. Multiple enemies pursue her through the air, trying to catch her. With an aerial acrobatics, she dodges an attack coming from above. She successfully lands on a ledge and prepares for the next move. Lee Nayeon looks back and comments that they are following her well. Opponents approach and shout to catch her as quickly as possible before the point difference grows. One opponent declares the chase will end there as she stops at the edge of a cliff. He states she can no longer flee now that his team has surrounded her. The opposing group leader then tells her to look back. She looks down and comments on the steep drop. The man states that not even she could jump from that height as the cliff edge begins to crumble. With a smile, Lee Nayeon agrees he's right. Then she shouts that she has nowhere to run and is cornered, leaving her opponent confused. She continues, asking if they won't let her escape, while they wonder what she's talking about. Suddenly, the ground begins to shake, surprising the opponents. Lee Nayeon says it's fine, as her team scales the cliff right behind her. She declares they won't make it easy either, as her teammates land around her. With a wink, she says there's nothing they can do about it. Seomin Yeop watches with a smile, as his companion is surprised by the YSM players jumping from the moving floating island. The commentators announce that the improved YSM will face Incheon BC, who lost their chance to hunt. One of the YSM players attacks an opponent, and the commentators declare there's no hope for Incheon BC. Another opponent is quickly taken down by a precise blow. The remaining Incheon BC players arrive to join the fight, but it's already too late. With a score of 9-0, YSM, who had always been in last place, wins the first set. Lee Nayeon and Jo Sung-ho are introduced as the team's new and surprising duo. The crowd goes wild, shouting the names of the two victorious players. Lee Nayeon is visibly moved by the crowd's reaction. At another moment, she addresses Seomin Yeop, who is sitting with his companion. He then asks if she saw and what he had told her. Seomin Yeop points to the girl and reaffirms his promise to make her a key player. He smiles and gives a thumbs up. Back in the arena, Lee Nayeon shrugs with a smile, while Jo Seung-ho looks confused beside her. The first set is announced as a YSM victory. This unexpected result shakes the Incheon BC team. Meanwhile, the YSM team stands tall, looking confident. In the second set, Lee Nayeon and Jo Sung-ho repeat the same containment strategy, and Incheon BC is defeated without being able to react. YSM maintains its pace and wins the match 2-0, with a large point difference. As expected, Lee Nayeon is announced as the MVP of the match and thanks the audience. She dedicates the honor to Seomin Yeop, and the news quickly spreads across online communities. The interview echoes across the internet, with articles praising the team's new playstyle. Comments also acknowledge Jo Sung-ho, the mind thief who operated behind the scenes. The match not only launched the two rookies to stardom, but also drew attention to Seomin Yeop, the man who created the strategy. Seomin Yeop's keen eye for discovering talent is once again etched in everyone's memory. Days later, a man asks Yeop if he was truly the one who discovered Lee Nayeon and Jo Sung-ho. Lying on a sofa, Seomin Yeop confirms and asks why he would lie about it. He boasts about his divine eyes, and the man asks if the duo would do well on the national team. The man advises him to first convince Choi Hyuk, but Yeop reveals he's already persuaded him. The man reveals that although Choi Hyuk wants to represent Korea, his current team opposes it, delaying the process. He then admits that the country's coaches don't like him, an outsider relying on past glories. Seomin Yeop sits up and challenges these critics to say the same in his presence. His companion comments that they wouldn't do it for fear of getting beaten. He then changes the subject and asks about Choi Hyuk's value. Yeop repeats the question, wanting to know the player's price. Sports News highlights YSM's 5th consecutive win, the Seomin Yeop effect, and the main duo's performance. A man shows his phone and euphorically announces their 5th consecutive win, an unprecedented record for the team. During the celebration, one of the team members cries, unable to believe they are living this moment. Seomin Yeop asks what their longest winning streak was before. The man admits they had never managed to win even 3 times in a row. He then comments that Lee Nayeon's name is all over the internet, and that Yeop was right about her potential. Yeop reminds him of Dongjun's comments about the player's stats and states, it's not time to celebrate. He explains that Jo Sung-ho is the key to their strategy, and now all teams know that. The man suggests, somewhat uncertainly, that they need to protect Sung-ho well. Seomin Yeop states the other isn't entirely useless and asks for some water. The man stands still for a moment, leaving Seomin Yeop puzzled by the reaction. Patting his shoulder, Yeop asks if he can maintain the same energy once the training results start to show. Choi Dongjun confidently confirms, and ManhwaCapped says he likes that, instructing him to accumulate wins before the first half of the year ends. He then specifies the goal of achieving a 50% win rate. The man is shaken by the goal but quickly shouts that, of course he can do it. Sitting at the table, No Jungwon comments that a 50% win rate would have been impossible for the previous team. He adds that ManhwaCapped calculates everything, and then Yap tells Dongjun he believes in him. No Jungwon remembers becoming a battleground player, thanks to Hanjung Industries' sponsorship. Now he decides it's time to give back to this team. ManhwaCapped gets up from the table, saying he can't just tease Dongjun. He then climbs onto a chair to get everyone's attention in the room, announcing he has something to say. He promises that if they achieve a 50% win rate, he will invest much more in the team, as they have shown their potential. The players respond in unison, "Yes, sir." ManhwaCapped then says goodbye, asking them not to follow him out, and the team wishes him a safe journey home. Outside a restaurant, he reflects that the problem now is bringing in new players. Jo Sungho's ability is limited to 3 kilometers, and if enemies ignore and neutralize him, Lee Naeun will become powerless. To use more varied strategies, he'll need new talents and, as Jeho said, more vigorous team training. He reflects that, with the new sponsorships, they have some leeway to attract players beyond those who came for his name. As he walks at night, thinking about how much he wants Choi Hyuk, his phone begins to ring. On his phone, a message from Baek Jeho suggests he look into youth leagues as there might be some remaining talents. With a smile, ManhwaCapped comments that Baek Jeho is being useful for the first time. He decides that once the first half of the year ends, they will recruit, and he tells the boys to wait. As ManhwaCapped predicted, YSM's winning streak ended at 6. As other teams discovered how to counter the duo, the team found focus in its captain, No Jungwon, and created new strategies that didn't solely rely on containment. Starting in 20th place out of 20 teams, YSM recorded a total of 10 wins and 8 losses. They finished the first half of the season in 11th place, and it was finally time to recruit new players. A crowd gathers in front of Youngmyung School's Battleground Club, and someone announces his arrival. Coach Kim Jung-moon greets him, and ManhwaCapped explains he's there as YSM's owner. Yeop says he has no specific objective and just wants to look around, and the coach offers to give him a personal tour. The coach invites ManhwaCapped in, and he praises the facilities, despite it being just a school club. Suddenly, something catches Yeop's attention, and the coach asks what's wrong. He points to a moving player and comments that the kid isn't bad. The coach explains he's already been recruited by the KB1 League team, Mirai Phoenix. ManhwaCapped gets annoyed for being interested in someone with such low stats, realizing he lowered his expectations. He needs a kid who hasn't been recruited yet, but has an average of 90 and a hidden ability. It's time to start the Rough Diamond project, but the coach calls him, pulling him from his thoughts. After observing the training sessions, Yeop doesn't find anyone who interests him. He gets frustrated by the difficulty of finding a young talent who hasn't been signed yet. Suddenly the gym door opens, and a boy enters, apologizing for his lateness. The coach greets him, and the young man apologizes again, saying he was studying for exams. The boy then recognizes ManhwaCapped, who wonders who that person is. Yeop then decides to use his ability to analyze the player. He approaches and asks if the young man often misses practice to study, and he confirms, saying he's preparing for college. ManhwaCapped then asks if any team has contacted him, and the boy replies no one has tried to recruit him. The young fan says it's an honor to meet him, and ManhwaCapped asks if he wants a handshake. The young man hesitates, mentioning a rumor that he hits fans, but Yeop reassures him, saying it's fine with him. He then extends his hand and states, the reason is because the boy will sign a contract with him. The young man, Yoon Byom, is shocked by the proposal, as his special ability, Shadow Walk, is revealed. It's a conditionally released ability that increases speed and allows the user to blend into shadows. ManhwaCapped comments that at the Korean League level, one could manage with an ability like this, leaving the boy confused. Determined to sign him before anyone else, he invites him to join YSM. Yoon Byom, however, questions how someone could know so much about him to offer a contract. In response, ManhwaCapped claims he saw him play on TV, but the boy retorts that he was on the bench the entire time. The man just smiles at that. Changing the subject, he explains that he sought him out precisely because he wondered why someone like him was always a reserve. In his view, the young man had a hidden talent that no one had recognized yet. Still, the boy insists there must be a mistake, considering himself weak and having a terrible ability. While acknowledging that ManhwaCapped is incredible, he asks what part of him shows any talent. Without hesitation, the recruiter points at him and says the answer is obviously his ability. He explains that Yoonbyom's ability seems vague, only working in shadows and offering a mere 20% bonus. The young man sighs, wondering what kind of useless ability that could be. To clarify, Seoman concludes that abilities usually develop according to the owner's personality traits, and this one reflected his shy nature. He also explains that a shadow power perfectly compatible with him could become much stronger with proper training. He even confirms he can see the ability's potential for evolution, which visibly surprises the boy. He then proposes that the student join the team for 2 years, and if he likes it, stay for another 3. If he decides to leave after this initial period, he'll receive 300 million won as compensation, an amount that shocks Yoonbyom. The boy says he needs to ask his mother, but Seoman grabs him and takes him away immediately. In the garage, the man pats the seat of a motorcycle and tells the young man to get on. Soon after, they speed off down the street, with Yoonbyom pleading for him to wait just a second. The contract is eventually signed with a special clause guaranteeing the 300 million won if the player leaves after 2 years. Holding the document, Seoman comments that it wasn't a bad start, while Yoonbyom's parents appear in the background, completely stunned. Satisfied, he gets back on the motorcycle, pleased to have already secured a player at the very first school. Now, he starts to wonder what kind of esper he'll find at the next institution he visits. Upon arriving at the new location, however, he's told that all the students have already been signed. Without pushing it, he turns and leaves, convinced he'll find someone at the next school. After all, there are still many more to go. The recruiter goes through several institutions but finds no one at any of them. The search continues at more high schools, but the result is the same. There are no more players available. Annoyed, Seoman realizes there isn't a single candidate left, and this was the last school on his list. Deciding to make this his last stop, Seoman heads to the gates of Jingyeon High School. Already seated at a table, he listens to the young man in front of him apologize, stating he has no plans to become a professional athlete. With a calm smile, Choi Jung-min explains that he just wants to enjoy the battlefield as a hobby, as his stats are analyzed. An older man informs him that the boy has been heavily scouted, but remains determined not to pursue a career, despite having decent attributes. Curious, Seoman asks if his parents agree with this decision, and the student replies that they're against it, as they don't understand why he'd choose to be poor. Still, Jungmin makes it clear he doesn't care what others say about his life, while the recruiter identifies the real problem as a defect. Placing his hands on his chest, the young man reveals his desire to become an author who can inspire hope and dreams in people. Faced with this, Seoman immediately recognizes the case as the so-called artist's defect. In a reflective tone, he repeats the words, hope and dreams, as if questioning them. He then formally introduces himself as Seomun the hero who brought hope and dreams to a world that nearly ended 17 years ago. Seizing the moment, he proposes that Jungmin use his talent to record his life story, from being left as an orphan to his survival in the dungeons. The young man is completely mesmerized by the idea of turning this man's life into an impressive dark fantasy book. As a final incentive, Seoman promises to share details about the final dungeon, a topic he has never spoken about before. However, he makes it clear this will only happen if he joins the team as a player, causing Choi Jung-min to jump to his feet and shout that he'll sign. The contract is finalized by Seoman with Choi Jung-min, including a 160 million deposit and a 55 million salary. This deal is more expensive than Yoonbyom's, but the recruiter is betting on the observation skill to improve the young man's technique. After signing, Jung-min approaches to ask a question. Casually, Seoman allows him to use his first name and asks what he wants to know. Without beating around the bush, the young man asks how he manages to have no weaknesses. Jungmin confesses that he's never seen anyone like him before. He mentions watching the French national team when they were in Korea, and although they were all incredible, none compared to Seomun At this, the hero just shrugs and questions how there could be anyone else like him in the world. He then reminds the boy that he doesn't like killing humans, something that was clear during the charity match. With the question answered, Seoman sends him back inside, telling him the coach will be in touch. As the young man walks away, the recruiter takes out his phone to start the main event. He calls back Jeho, who asks if he found any good players. In response, Seoman explains that the most talented ones had already been signed, but he still managed to secure 2. He also mentions that if he manages to get Choi Hyuk, he'll have 18 players, which is why he'll be running late. Ending the conversation, he says goodbye, mentioning he'll stop by to talk to him in person. Seoman answers the phone with a slight smile, asking where else else he would be. Shortly after, he arrives at the Sangsung Spirit's headquarters to meet with the coach, who supposedly has a problem with him. At the entrance, the guards try to stop him, but the man reminds them that the Blue House said the exact same thing. An image from the past appears, showing Seomin Yeop attacking the Blue House to demand a meeting with the president. Faced with this, the guards ask for permission to at least send a report to their superiors, and he agrees to wait. While waiting, he walks through the facility, observing how everything is new and extremely expensive. For a moment, he stops to gaze at the modern building in front of him. In a casual tone, he comments that the club clearly has a lot of money and far superior facilities than his own team. Meanwhile, at his own headquarters in the mountains of Gangwon-do, the only available activity would be hiking. A voice then calls out, "Club owner Seomin Yeop," making him turn his head. The man before him introduces himself as Kim Jin-tae, the head of Sangsung Spirits, explaining he rushed over as soon as he heard he was there. Curious, Seomin Yeop asks if, as the head, he is responsible for scouting and player transfers, and receives an immediate confirmation. He then mentions that coach Choi Dong-jun usually handles those duties, leading Jin-tae to comment on how multi-talented he is. Unamused, Seomin Yeop scolds him, telling him not to say that even as a joke. Kim Jin-tae becomes visibly tense, reminding himself to stay on his toes around this ticking time bomb. Cautiously, he mentions hearing that Seomin Yeop was looking for the coach, receiving confirmation that it's about a transfer. On the Korean battlefield, everyone knows that Seomin Yeop recommended a position change for Choi Hyuk, but the coach rejected the suggestion. Worried about the potential chaos of this meeting, Jin-tae suggests they handle the matter directly with him. Still, Seomin Yeop insists on speaking with the coach personally to avoid repeating himself and asks to be taken to him. As they walk to the room, Jin-tae mentally apologizes to the coach for being unable to prevent this visit. Upon entering, Seomin Yeop introduces himself as the owner of YSM. Extending his hand, he says he's come to discuss business with Choi Moon-sung, the coach of Sangsung Spirits. The man shakes his hand with a trembling grip, sweat dripping down his face, a reaction that confuses Seomin Yeop. Suddenly, a sharp sound echoes in his ear. The coach starts sweating even more when Seomin Yeop asks if they've met before. Stepping closer, he comments that the man's face looks quite familiar. A young player interrupts the scene by asking if Seomin Yeop knows the coach, leading him to question who the newcomer is. The young man introduces himself as Yeom Ji-hyuk, the team captain, and explains that the coach called him over in the middle of practice. The coach then tries to justify himself, stating that the captain needs to be aware of all matters related to the players. Paying no attention to the interruption, Seomin Yeop ignores the explanation and turns back to the coach. The persistent gaze is unsettling, and the man finally asks why he's being stared at that way. Without backing down, Seomin Yeop presses the question, wanting to know if they've really never met before. Wiping away sweat, the coach denies it, saying he must be mistaken since he knows so many people. Even so, Seomin Yeop insists he's sure he's seen him at some point, prompting the other man to try and change the subject to the negotiation involving Choi Hyuk. The mere mention of the name makes the coach visibly flinch. Seeing this, Seomin Yeop says he can't talk about that matter right now, as he first needs to search his own memories, while the other man panics. Focusing, he tries to remember, as the coach begs for that bad memory to be forgotten. In desperation, the man insists he shouldn't stress about it, but Seomin Yeop replies that he doesn't believe their meeting was a casual one. Suddenly, his eyes flash the moment the memory returns. He bluntly asks if it was in the dungeons, leaving the coach shocked by the discovery. Confirming the memory, Seomin Yeop states that he never forgets those who pissed him off during dungeon raids. He then specifies the time and place, mentioning the Temple of the Vengeful Spirit in 1993, and confronts him directly. He wonders why he let him get away that time, since he had planned to kill him after the raid was over. Desperate, the coach reveals he even grew a mustache to avoid being recognized and begs for the past to be forgotten. The scene then flashes back to 1993 at Seoul Station, where 200 raiders had gathered for a dungeon raid. A young 18-year-old Seomin Yeop warns everyone about the traps and the enormous number of monsters. However, a voice cuts him off mid-speech, telling him to wait. A man in the crowd suggests they use their numerical advantage to push forward and take out the boss first. Choi Moon-sung, then 24, claims Seomin Yeop's fame is overblown and offers to take the lead. He continues to argue that conquering a few dungeons means nothing, and that the real deciding factor is strategy. Annoyed, Seomin Yeop calls him a bastard, but Jin-tae holds him back, telling him to let it go. Jin-tae asks him to calm down and finish explaining the plan so they can all enter the dungeon. At this, Seomin Yeop steps back and warns Choi Moon-sung that they'll talk after the raid. Moon-sung just laughs, saying he can't simply follow some kid's plan. Arrogantly, he boasts that he can also conquer this dungeon, just as a stone golem appears to attack. Raising his shield, Seomin Yeop orders the tanks to rotate, allowing the main unit to eliminate enemies one by one. Charging through the battle, he yells for everyone to keep moving. Wielding his sword, Choi Moon-sung questions how they expect to clear the dungeon at this pace. He then declares, "There's no reason to listen to a brat like Seomin Yeop." Stepping on a stone slab, he proclaims that after this dungeon, the world will be his. The man suddenly freezes as he realizes he's triggered something on the floor. In that instant, he remembers the warning about the large number of hidden traps. Soon after, huge rocks begin to fall from the ceiling right above his head. Unable to get out of the way in time, someone yanks him back by the collar. The rocks crash violently onto the ground exactly where he had been standing a second before. The rock slide completely blocks the passage, and a raider reports that the alternate routes will take 6 hours to cross. Silently, Seomin Yeop appears behind Choi Moon-sung, who is visibly terrified. Without warning, he grabs the coach by the collar and threatens him, saying he'll see him once they're all out. Moon-sung remembers being beaten nearly to death after that dungeon, and the mere memory makes his bones ache. Trying to feign ignorance, he's cut off when Seomin Yeop insists they need to talk alone for a moment. With a shaky voice, the coach asks what he plans to do, only to be told there's no reason to be afraid. Seomin Yeop then asks if Moon-sung really thinks he'd seek revenge for something that happened so long ago. He bluntly tells him the other two need to leave so they can talk in private, unless he doesn't mind being overheard. The situation makes the coach squirm with frustration. After a few seconds, he orders Ji-hyuk to escort the chief out of the room, stating he needs to sort something out with the visitor. Alone with him, Seomin Yeop identifies him as the man who ignored his orders because of some half-baked theory. The coach recalls how he questioned those instructions and ended up extending the dungeon raid by 9 hours. Admitting his mistake, he says he remembers what happened and that he was young and immature back then. Mercilessly, Seomin Yeop retorts that he was still younger than him. Moon-sung tries to defend himself by recalling that he was already beaten nearly to death when the raid ended. Partially agreeing, Seomin Yeop comments that it would be wrong to hit him for something so old, then suggests he can get beaten for what he did just now. The coach is shocked to hear that, according to Seomin Yeop, he had done something wrong. With a snap of his fingers, Seomin Yeop states that even ignoring his past foolishness, a new mistake was made, and it requires another lesson. He then walks toward him and says not to worry, as he knows how to hold back when dealing with an elder. Feeling the pressure, the coach demands to know what he did wrong, but Seomin Yeop throws the question back, asking if he's truly aware of what he did by opposing Choi Hyuk's position change. Furthermore, he points out that the other man knew full well that Jeho was listening to their conversation, which made his actions even more brazen. Giving up on physical aggression, Seomin Yeop takes out his phone and says he'll do exactly what the coach did. With a calm smile, he reveals he'll just leak his story to the reporters, who love this kind of scandal. The threat provokes an immediate reaction, and the coach talks about suing him for slander, but Seomin Yeop encourages him to try, warning that he doesn't sue people. He goes after them. Desperate, the coach asks why he's doing this. The answer is direct and simple. Seomin Yeop demands that he just hand over Choi Hyuk. He reminds him that there's only 1 year left on the player's contract, which means that in 6 months, the club will have to release him without any transfer fee. He bluntly accuses the coach of being the one responsible for ruining everything by wasting precious years of an athlete's career out of sheer stubbornness and personal feelings. At this, the coach finally gives in and agrees, grumbling that there are plenty of other melee players who can replace Choi Hyuk. Still, he sets a condition, establishing the transfer fee at 1.2 billion won. Seomin Yeop just smiles and calmly repeats the amount of 1.2 billion won. He then comments on the luxurious facilities he saw and questions how anyone could charge so much from a poor club owner like himself. Provocatively, he states that this attitude is starting to annoy him and that he feels like hitting him again, but makes it clear that if the price drops, he'll consider it the cost of his life and let it slide. The mention of his own life's value leaves the coach completely shocked. In that moment, he remembers that Seomin Yeop always keeps his word and would actually be capable of taking his life if he wanted to. Trying to negotiate, the coach offers 1 billion, but Seomin Yeop asks if his life is only worth 200 million, causing the offer to drop to 800 million. Finding that price too cheap, Seomin Yeop remains impassive, leading the other to reduce it to 500 million. Still, he asks if the man is sure he wants to give up his life for that price. In complete desperation, the coach screams and finally caves, offering 100 million. The two shake hands, and the coach asks that in return, there be no more hard feelings between them. With a smile, Seomin Yeop agrees, formally addressing him as Coach Choi Moon-sung. The man replies that he'll hold Mr. Seomin Yeop to that promise. Convinced the problem is finally over, he thinks this even as he considers the other man a demonic bastard. However, Choi Moonsung doesn't realize that Seomin Yeop was far more vengeful than he ever imagined. A few days later, at YSM headquarters, Seomin Yeop greets the newcomer. Choi Hyuk is standing before him, holding a suitcase. With a confident smile, Seomin Yeop welcomes him, stating that from this day forward, this is his team. Choi Hyuk's contract is settled with an annual salary of 600 million won for 5 years. Thanks to the negotiation led by coach Choi Dongjun, the final transfer fee paid to the Sangsung Spirits ends up being only 50 million won. The players' contracts are finally finalized on the table. Sitting on the sofa, Seomin Yeop laments that even with 3 new recruits, he's barely managed to reach 18 athletes, far from filling the 22 available spots. A young woman enters the room complaining about the heat, and he immediately greets her back. Approaching him, she calls him Uncle Yeop and asks why he's been working so hard lately, since she hardly ever sees him. In response, he comments that she's the one who's been busier, leading the girl to mention that Seung-hee was upset about him not being home. At that moment, Seomin Yeop points to the book in her hands and asks what it is. She reveals it's a French for beginners book, and he takes the opportunity to tease her about the title. Continuing the joke, he says the world is a wonderful place for having children's books like that, but the young woman insists she's being serious. With teary eyes, she complains that French is difficult and asks if he couldn't just go to France with her. Surprised, Seomin Yeop asks what she's talking about. Jake Rand, the European battlefield agent, joins the conversation and explains that her contract will be finalized after a physical test in Paris. In the first half of the season, Baek Hayan became the MVP as Korea's best melee dealer after her position change. The Moro brothers, who had always shown interest in her, wasted no time and made an official offer. With the Paris Lumiere contract signed, her debut in the European Battlefield League was about to happen. Seomin Yeop finally understands why she's studying French and, despite being too busy to notice before, trusts that everything will be fine under Jake Rand's care. The agent comments that after finalizing matters with Miss Beck, it's time to talk with Mr. Seomin. Now seated, Seomin Yeop asks why he was called, and Jake Rand reveals that the Moro brothers want to invite him to Paris. He questions the reason for the invitation, and the agent explains their intention is for him to act as Baek Hayan's interpreter and also to receive a gift in person. The simple mention of a gift surprises him. In a flashback, the Moro brothers offer to give him a custom weapon, as they are huge fans who deeply admire his work. Seomin Yeop remembers they really did want to give him a weapon, while the agent comments that it would be a small price to pay for his presence. Even so, he declines, explaining he's too busy trying to increase the number of players on his team before the end of the season. He adds that his team is practically a neighborhood club and that he's poor, leading Jake Rand to lament the situation. Given this, the agent suggests he scout for new talent in Paris. Jake Rand explains that the Korean League allows up to 5 foreign players, and that in France, it would be possible to find a good athlete on reasonable terms. He also highlights that the trip would be a great experience as a club owner, as it would allow him to observe the operations of the French League up close. Seomin Yeop ponders the possibility of signing foreign players. With a slight smile, he points at the idea and admits it doesn't sound bad at all. The scene then shifts to Charles de Gaulle International Airport in Paris, France. Walking through the terminal, Seomin Yeop carries his suitcase while observing the bustle around him. Baek Hayan comments that it's been a long time since she was last in Paris, and adds it would have been nice if Jeho could have come too. In response, he explains that Jeho is busy training and suggests they use the time to find a place for her to live. Suddenly, a crowd of reporters appears, repeatedly calling out Seomin Yeop's name. Annoyed, he complains that these damn journalists are the same in every country. In the midst of the chaos, a man in a blue suit waves at him, leading him to immediately identify him as the culprit behind the situation. Curious, Seomin Yeop asks why the club owner came in person, and the man explains that he directly oversees player management. He admits the other man isn't wrong to think that so much attention could be beneficial for a rookie like Hayan. Taking the opportunity, the man suggests he give an interview to his dear niece. Facing the cameras and microphones, Seomin Yeop states that he's feeling good, as it's the first time he's traveled for leisure and not because of dungeons. He clarifies that although he received an offer, he's only there to support his niece and has no intention of accepting anything at the moment. One of the reporters then asks if he plans to meet with Eric Thuram, one of the 7 heroes since he's in France. Seomin Yeop recalls hearing from Baek Jeho that Thuram married a smart woman and leads a quiet life in the countryside. In response, he says he won't be in the country for long, but he'd like to meet him if he happens to be in Paris. Somewhere, someone watching the interview on television spits out their drink in surprise. In another scene, Eric Thuram, one of the 7 heroes, spills his coffee upon being called by Jake Rand. Surprised, he sees on television that Seomin Yeop is in France. Without wasting a moment, Eric Thuram runs and dives off the boat, while Jake Rand shouts his name from a distance. Already in the water, he says he needs to return to France immediately due to an emergency and that they can fish another time. Only then does Jake Rand realize they are in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. The scene changes to the luxurious headquarters of the Paris Lumiere Club. Inside the building, the Moro brothers greet the group enthusiastically, expressing how happy they are with Seomun Yeop's visit. Seizing the moment, they excitedly suggest that since he came all this way, he should sign a contract with the club as well. Unswayed, Seomun Yeop replies that his niece will work hard in his place and asks them to take good care of her. The brothers then invite him to take the club's physical test, assuring him they can provide extremely accurate results. Excitedly, they continue to overwhelm him with requests for autographs, exhibition proposals, and even the offer of a film crew to follow him on his trip. Trying to rein in their excess, Seomun Yeop asks them to calm down, but he's interrupted when one of them states that preparations have already been made. A woman in combat gear introduces herself, ready to begin the test. In the evaluation room, Seomun Yeop translates a question from one of the brothers, while Baek Hayan confirms she is comfortable. The test begins, and several creatures appear before her inside the arena. The instruction is clear and direct. Defeat all the monsters that are created. Seomun Yeop translates that the time limit for the test is just 1 minute. Without hesitation, Baek Hayan charges at high speed toward the creatures. The dark monsters move to intercept her in the center of the arena. Before her next move, her eyes glow intensely. With a rapid and precise sequence of strikes, she cuts down all the creatures in her path. The test is completed in just 22 seconds, and she casually comments that it was fun. Curious, she asks how she did, receiving praise from Seomun Yeop, who says she's gotten stronger. As she mentions she's been training hard, one of the Moro brothers praises her moves and decides to hire her on the spot. The result she achieved was naturally far superior to what they had expected. At 24, her stats indicate she is still in her growth phase as an Esper. With the best trainers available here, she can improve her strength, endurance, and skill until she reaches her limits. Although her special ability and aura still need more training, her capabilities are already enough to make her a key player here. Signing an athlete of her caliber for just 4 million euros was considered an excellent deal. At that moment, a voice asks if Mr. Seomun Yeop is present, making him turn toward the sound. Baek Hayan immediately recognizes the newcomer, while the woman beside her comments on his appearance. Observing the figure from a distance, Seomun Yeop identifies him as one of the top 3 players on the battlefield. He remembers that in the past, there were raiders with extraordinary speed. Still, it was rare to find someone as agile as Jeho was in his prime. Nathan Bernard, one of the club's top 3 players, was exactly that kind of athlete. Seomun Yeop never imagined they would end up meeting like this. Finally, the man turns and reveals himself as Nathan Bernard. In 2005, Seomun Yeop and the 7 heroes defeated the last dungeon. With the war over, many fighters laid down their arms and chose to retire. In this new era, the battlefield was created as a form of mass entertainment, inevitably raising the question of who could succeed Seomun Yeop. This format turned many espers into prominent figures. Still, there was one name that was never left out of these discussions. The ace of the French national team and Paris Lumiere was named Player of the Year for 3 consecutive seasons. That name was Nathan Bernard. 2 men question his presence there on his day off, but he replies that he came to see Mr. Seomun. Seomun Yeop watches as he approaches with a confident smile. Nathan then turns to greet his new teammate. A woman sitting in a chair waves back at him. She then asks the woman next to her what he said, but the other admits she didn't understand either. Approaching, Nathan bows slightly and introduces himself to Seomun Yeop. The man before him just stares in silence. Suddenly, Nathan rushes forward with his arms outstretched toward him. Instinctively, Seomun Yeop braces for what looks like an attack. However, instead, Nathan pulls him into a tight hug. The young man tenses up, completely frozen by the unexpected gesture. A moment later, Nathan lets him go and welcomes him to Paris. Seomun Yeop replies that he already knew of him, as he'd watched recordings of his matches. The young man is visibly flustered to receive a compliment from his childhood hero. A screen then displays Nathan Bernard's profile, detailing his stats and special ability. Seomun's analysis reveals that, with the exception of stamina, all his attributes have a limit of 90 points. His ability, Alter Ego, allows him to split into 2 at the cost of half his aura. Baek Jeho observes that with room to grow, he could surpass his own peak. His high technical skills allow other abilities to be used freely, while the skill is active. Moreover, his stamina isn't a weak point, being higher than the average tanker in the KB1 league. Given this, Yeop wonders how he would fare against someone like Gerald Walker. Suddenly, a slight jolt pulls him from his thoughts. Big Jeho approaches and asks if he's settled things with Gerald Walker. Confused, Yeop asks why he's bringing him up, and Baek Jeho explains that he's been praising the guy ever since he got back from Korea. With a calm smile, he says he was just better and taught Walker a few things. Nathan watches the conversation, not quite understanding. Yeop then explains that he just showed him who's boss. He then confirms the fight was televised, which clearly annoyed him. The Moro brothers show their excitement upon hearing that Yeop won the fight. Nathan then asks if he could really defeat Walker in a direct confrontation. Cleaning his ear disdainfully, the answer is simple. Walker is only human. At this, the Moro brothers comment that now they understand how he's improved so much lately. They express admiration for him having strengthened a player who could become a future opponent. Then, they both raise their fists and hail him as the best, leaving him momentarily speechless. Trying to shield himself from the almost symbolic glare coming off their heads, Yeop backs away slightly, while Nathan is still processing the news of Walker's defeat. To himself, Nathan admits that even he avoids facing Gerald Walker alone. In an official match, the opponent has clear disadvantages, but a fight with no environmental or time limits is a different story. He regrets having believed for so long that he'd never get a chance to fight Yeop, since everyone thought he was dead. Now that he knows he's alive, Nathan finds himself determined to face him somehow. Elsewhere, Baek Jeho warns Baek Hayan to be careful with that man, but she replies that he's not her type. A woman appears between them and curiously asks what her ideal type is. Without hesitation, Hayan explains that she likes someone rougher and braver. She then glances towards Yeop, who is watching her from a distance. The woman argues that men like that often get into trouble, but Hayan retorts that those are precisely the ones who achieve great things. Turning to the woman, she firmly states that she can handle her own love life. Yeop watches the scene in silence, pondering it. A short while later, Hayan tells Uncle Yeop that she's going out shopping with her mother. She says goodbye, promising to buy him a few things. Nathan offers to escort them, and Yeop agrees, thanking him. He waves back as he watches them leave, when one of the Moro brothers asks if they should head to the workshop. The other mentions there's something they need to give him, catching his attention. Without objecting, Yeop agrees and asks them to lead the way. Inside the workshop, the group watches a man hammering a piece of glowing metal. The blacksmith then holds up the material he was working on. One of the Moro brothers presents a room full of weapons, proudly stating that they were all made right there. Yeop carefully examines a display case showing various swords. He then picks one up and praises its quality, commenting that he has used countless types of weapons throughout his life. Pleased with the recognition, the brothers show their delight. They explain that the workshop required a huge investment, but now they produce some of the best equipment in the world. With their arms raised, they both celebrate having turned the situation into a great advantage. They then announce that, thanks to this, they've prepared a special gift for Yeop. One of them presses a button on a nearby panel. A hidden compartment slowly opens in the wall. Inside, several spears are displayed on a panel bearing the name Yeop. One of the brothers hands him one of the weapons and invites him to test it. Holding the handle, he asks how to extend it, as he can't find any visible mechanism. The blacksmith instructs him to channel his aura directly into the spear. Following the instruction, Yeop grips the object more firmly. The weapon then extends, transforming into a full spear in his hands. One of the brothers explains that while the old collapsible spear was already impressive, these were made with high-tech materials. They warn that the durability is a bit lower, but point out that it's not a problem, as the weapons can be duplicated on the battlefield. Yeop retracts the spear and comments that since there are no more real dungeons, he'd hardly use it outside the arenas. As he notes how portable the equipment is, the brothers assure him that with proper care, it can be used limitlessly. Intrigued, he asks if they really created all of this just to give it to him. One of the Moro brothers confirms it, but makes it clear that it's not an exclusive use item. According to him, if it's a spear used by Yeop, the replicas will sell like never before, leaving him speechless. They then reveal that the weapon is part of a sponsorship contract, which visibly annoys him. One of them makes a hand gesture and explains that they've already calculated the value of the deal. The proposal involves a payment of 1.5 million euros per year for 5 years. Additionally, they offer an extra bonus of 3 million euros for each match he uses the weapon in. Yeop tilts his head slightly as he listens to the question of what he thinks of the proposal. With the spear still in his hand, he accepts the deal. deal. The hero Seomin Yeop might have refused, but the club owner Seomin Yeop couldn't afford to turn down that much money. Seomin Yeop signs the contract as one of the Moro brothers asks if he's read all the clauses. They remind him of a specific condition that requires him to keep the weapon, leading him to wonder why he would ever throw it away. The brother then asks if he's an active player on the battlefield, to which he answers no. Seomin Yeop explains that only registered players can carry Esper weapons, though he claims to have immunity. Even so, the brothers clarify that the weapon wouldn't pass through customs regardless. This makes him stand up immediately. He states that he won't force the issue, not wanting to cause trouble for Baek Jeho and Mr. Jinte. At that moment, the two strike an exaggerated pose and announce there's a simple solution. Leaning in, they suggest that if he can't take the weapon because he's not a player, he should just become one. Baek Hayan and her mother arrive soon after, announcing they're back and have brought gifts. Seomin Yeop is completely frozen, his mouth hanging open. Hayan finds him sitting in a chair and asks what's going on. Hours earlier, the brothers were explaining that to become a player, he needed to register with his own country's association. They continued, saying that since the registration is regulated by the International Association, it doesn't matter which country he does it in. The suggestion is for him to register in France, allowing him to declare the weapon at customs without any issues. In that instant, Seomin Yeop realizes it was all planned from the start as the brothers strike their signature pose again. Annoyed, he glares at them in silence. They begin to circle him, explaining that the art of negotiation is to let things flow, even when hidden intentions are already known. They then assure him there are no downsides to registering, only more options to participate in matches. As proof that they're his biggest fans, they remind him they won his charity car at an auction. Furthermore, they reveal they also acquired the diary he stopped writing in after just 4 days. Furious to discover they have his diary, Seomin Yeop demands they call an employee immediately. Back in the present, he complains to Hayan about now being registered as a player. She congratulates him on the sponsorship deal, pointing out that he's now officially a professional player. Seomin Yeop replies that he won't be forced to play. At that exact moment, the Moro brothers appear at the door and invite him to sign with Paris Lumiere. Annoyed, he moves toward them, causing the two to retreat hastily. Hayan then expresses her wish for him to join her team, so they can work together just like he did with her father. In silence, Seomin Yeop reflects that, to him, that past feels like it only happened a few months ago. Hayan turns to him and mentions she heard he got a new weapon. Nathan enters the room right after, and Seomin Yeop confirms the bald guys gave him the gift, prompting the young man to suggest they test it out. Despite being officially on vacation, he explains the team still trains twice a week to prepare for the next season. Nathan invites him to join the practice, commenting that it would be fun. Hearing this, Seomin Yeop realizes the young man makes no effort to hide his competitive spirit. With a slight smile, he starts to find him interesting. In response, he taps his fist against Nathan's chest and accepts the fight. The next day, at the Paris Lumiere Club headquarters, the players chat excitedly about how to enjoy the rest of their vacation, while one of them asks about an absent teammate. Baek Hayan clenches her fists, noticing the team's general lack of spirit. Noticing this, Seomin Yeop advises her to relax, reminding her she's the only one overflowing with enthusiasm. He remarks that she's a lot like her father, who got so nervous in his first dungeon that he passed out in just 10 minutes. Two players holding hands watch the two arrive. Another player turns to look in the same direction. Slowly, whispers spread through the group as they recognize Seomin Yeop. Some comment that the club owners actually managed to bring him here. Eric Thuram watches the scene in silence. Hayan notices the stares and whispers directed at her uncle Yeop and tries to compose herself. A tall man approaches and calls out to Seomin Yeop. Introducing himself as Chichi Lucas, the main tank for Paris Lumiere, he explains who he is, while the other asks what he wants. Unintimidated, Seomin Yeop faces him and asks if there's anything else. With a relaxed smile, Chichi Lucas asks for an autograph on his jacket. Fulfilling the request, Seomin Yeop signs his name and adds a short message. He then introduces his niece, and Chichi comments that he's looking forward to training with her. Seomin Yeop watches as the man walks away. Proudly, Chichi Lucas shows off the autograph emblazoned on his chest. A screen appears, displaying Chichi Lucas's profile, complete with his stats and skills. Seomin's analysis reveals that while Nathan is the team's ace, Chichi is simply irreplaceable. He's not inferior to Walker or Nathan, and with his speed he could even surpass the team's star player. Among his skills, Green Blessing particularly catches Seomin Yeop's attention. He watches the tank walk down the hallway. Just then, Nathan approaches and asks if he's already spoken with Chichi. He then explains that the impressive player also leads a charity foundation dedicated to forest preservation. With that, Seomin Yeop immediately understands the origin of that skill. Nathan then comments on his teammates' constantly good mood. Not hiding his excitement, he admits he can't contain his happiness at seeing his dream finally come true. He then declares directly to ManhwaCapped that he has always wanted to defeat him. In a flashback, a young Nathan looks at the statue of the hero who saved the world, seeing him as an idol to be surpassed. Soon after, he remembers seeing the memorial for ManhwaCapped, who had died in the final dungeon. At that moment, young Nathan believed his dream would never come true. Back in the present, the two face each other, and ManhwaCapped comments that humans like to dream. Nathan states that as long as he's alive, he'll keep trying, and that today, he will fight with everything he's got. With a faint smile, ManhwaCapped simply wishes him good luck. At that moment, the Moro brothers appear, striking an exaggerated pose and greeting everyone. Right after, Dubois Goffini introduces himself as the coach of Paris Lumiere BC. Turning to the assembled players, he asks if they should divide into teams. The coach explains that normally, the team is split between the two main players, Chi-Chi and Nathan. However, because there's a special guest, he announces they will form Team Seoman and Team Nathan. ManhwaCapped asks how they will divide the teams by position and balance. In response, the coach explains there's a special method for organizing teams during practice games. With an amused smile, he reveals they use rock, paper, scissors. ManhwaCapped's team is formed, with Chi-Chi Lucas and other players by his side. Nathan's team is then assembled with the remaining players. Finishing the preparations, the coach announces that they now have two fantastic teams and that it's time to begin.